All right. You know how it go. Saturday night, so it's Saturday night. Shoot the breeze. If you can hear my voice out there, drop a one for me. I don't think I have anyone with me yet, but for all intents and purposes, it looks like my audio is good. Drop a one for me if you hear my voice. You know what the deal is. I like to come here before we start the show officially to let you guys know what we have in store for you tonight. Thank you, Vru and Icon Fire for the one. Thank you very much for letting me know. The topics that we have tonight, we're going to talk about the most segregated hour in America and how some Black Christians feel they have something in common with the segregationists. We will want to answer the question, how would you feel if your sons brought home a Becky? We're going to return to some topics we didn't get to last week. We're going to talk about Burkina Faso's new family code and how they're banning certain things. Why can't they ban interracial relationships? I'm going to read about a story called Monica's Story. The woman shipped from Ghana to Portugal in 1556. Those are the topics that we have for you tonight. I would like to also invite you guys explicitly to join the Discord. The description and the link is down. The link is down in the description. Join the Discord so you can post Shoot the Breeze topics you'd like to see discussed as well. I'm trying to get more women involved, but I realize that that's going to be difficult with some of the conversations, particularly of late. But frankly, I think it's difficult anyway to get more women involved. But shout out to the matron who's doing her thing on KWAZ Radio. Shout out to her with her readings. But I'd like to get more women involved on the Discord. And there's some of you who post topics, but you don't respond to anything else on the Discord. I'd like you guys to start responding so we can have a real community discussion. I'll leave that there for now. We're going to start the show officially. And on the other side, I'm going to drop Shoot the Breeze topic number one, as well as introduce any and all of my panelists. So please stay tuned. In the meantime, like the video, share it on your social media, etc. Do stay tuned.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Koku. Just want to remind you guys before we get the show rolling that this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. There are other shows on the network you are invited to tune into.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where Black problems are addressed with Black solutions.
Greetings, fam. Tune in to The Learning Curve with me, the Revolutionary Matron on KWAZ Radio.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Yes, indeed. Make sure you also tune in to Kofi the Black Critic, Brother Bakari's BBN Network, the Forecast Radio, who's often with Consider Cheek. Check all of them out on the network. Make sure you give them your support in terms of your likes, your shares, your conversations in the chat, etc. Let me just go down the line here. Like I said, I Can Fire is out there in the chat. Vru is out there as well. I feel like I've seen Vru before, but I feel like it's been a while. Trigger Happy 262 Plus is out there. Daily Affirmations by Pauline is saying good evening to you. Provide Triggers for Evolution says greetings to all. Greetings to you too. Provide Triggers for Evolution. So far, I have one panelist with me. That'll be the trusted Black Steel. Black Steel, how are you this week?
I'm doing good, man. They say steel don't rust, so I'm here for you.
I like that. Steel don't rust. I appreciate that. Good stuff, man. Again, thanks for being here. Yeah, I'm just gonna get right into it. It's me and Black Steel right now. Steel don't rust. Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 says, Malcolm X once said, the most segregated hour in America is high noon on a Sunday. What do Black Christians have in common here again? This takes us to Twitter. Make sure you guys can see my screen. My computer has been a little slow the last few weeks, so I apologize. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so you see the kind of folks we're talking about here. This is a tweet from I Expose Racists and Pedos. It says, degenerate filth. In fact, I won't even read it. I'm just going to get right into the video. We're going to watch it. It's short. We might watch it twice, and then we'll discuss it.
The actual number of Blacks who are committing murder is more than whites. Right. And whites are significantly greater,
60% compared to 13%
percentage of the population. Yeah.
So if you take that, and then you took a law like Deuteronomy 21, which is a just law that God enacted through Moses. The law was that if you had a rebellious son, you have a child they're coming up into their manhood and they're rebellious. They don't listen. He lists some characteristics, and even though they're disciplined, they will not turn. He says the fathers to bring them out into the town square. This is a rebellious son, and then they stone him to death. They kill him.
And an armed robber would certainly be one of those.
Oh, absolutely. Armed robber, all the ghetto
violent
culture.
crimes.
Basically, take ghetto culture. It would describe this to a T. If you did that over 3 generations, how much violent crime would you have in the 3rd and 4th generation? Much, much less.
The actual number of Blacks who are committing murder is more than
whites.
Right. And whites are significantly greater,
60% compared to 13%
percentage of the population. Yeah.
So if you take that, and then you took a law like Deuteronomy 21, which is a just law that God enacted through Moses. The law was that if you had a rebellious son, you have a child they're coming up into their manhood and they're rebellious. They don't listen. He lists some characteristics, and even though they're disciplined, they will not turn. He says the fathers to bring them out into the town square. This is a rebellious son, and then they stone him to death. They kill him.
And an armed robber would certainly be one of those.
Oh, absolutely. Armed robber, all the ghetto
violent
culture.
crimes.
Basically, take ghetto culture. It would describe this to a T. If you did that over 3 generations, how much violent crime would you have in the 3rd and 4th generation? Much, much less.
The actual
Very interesting conversation there. Provide Triggers for Evolution says she thought it was a quote rather from James Baldwin. I think what it was, I think James Baldwin was recalling something Malcolm X said, which was Sunday is the most segregated hour. If I remember correctly, I think I remember James Baldwin was recalling that in one of his talks at some point. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so with that said, man, let me introduce Buana this week. Buana, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good, Coco. Sorry, I apologize for my lateness, brother, but I'm here.
No, you're here. That's what's important. I appreciate you being here as well. Um, so Malcolm X, should be topic number one. Malcolm X once said the most segregated hour in America is high noon on a Sunday. What do Black Christians have in common here again? Like, what do Black Christians have in common with what these guys said? I know Black Steel was here first, so I'm going to throw it to Black Steel first. Black Steel, what do Black Christians really have in common with these guys who claim to be Christian?
Nothing. Nothing. And I think that we have to I mean, if you're a Black person who is a Christian, you have to come to some terms with your faith, as far as what you believe in. And it has always been that way. Whereas Black people use Christianity, in their words, it was a tool for their resistance and their, to liberate themselves from slavery. Black Christians would often quote the Exodus, talk about Moses leading the people to freedom. He, what they call liberation theology. But then at the same time, white Christians would use Christianity in the Bible as an excuse for slavery. There's a very famous passage in Ephesians: "Slaves, be obedient to thy masters." The Old Testament gives rules on how to treat slaves, and how long you can hold the person for bondage. Like you can hold a foreigner forever. You can only hold a Hebrew slave for a certain amount of time, so on and so forth. There's a book in the New Testament, the book of Philemon. It's basically a book about a runaway slave who the Apostle Paul tells him to return to his master now that he has converted to Christianity. So I think that there's a lot of conflicting views within the churches, but Black people have used Christianity as a way of liberation, right? There's neither slave nor free in Christ Jesus, so on and so forth. Whereas white people have used it very differently. I'm not surprised that this man is coming up with doctored stats. That's the thing about statistics; they can be used to justify um, anything and everything, whatever they want to do. So he's quoting the oft-cited point about Black people, which are 13% of the U.S. population, being responsible for the majority of the crime, and specifically murder, which is simply not true, because the 13% includes women and children also. It's really a very small percentage. But also, too, what they leave out of that fact is that not only if Black people are the majority of the people committing the murder, Black people are also the majority of murder victims, right? But then also, too, when he's talking about the 13% of people committing the crime, what he's referring to is arrests. He's referring to Black people getting arrested a great deal. But Black people also make up over 50% of exonerations. So what he's quoting, the stats he's quoting, is not so much the fact that Black people are responsible for murders, but we're the most who are arrested, right? Every arrest does not result in a conviction. But they're using these statistics as a way to justify violence against Black people, what he called God's perfect law, right? Stoning people to death. Basically comparing Black people to unruly children. And the white people are their parents who are supposed to get them in line. When we were on this planet long before they were. So it's always funny to me when white people want to quote these statistics about crime and criminality as if school shootings are rare. The majority of people out here shooting up the school and killing the babies is white people. The majority of people molesting the kids is white people. The majority of people who have child pornography is white people. The majority of people who die from drug overdoses is white people. So all of this criminality and whatnot that Black people are so responsible for, but yet they'll ignore their crimes, as a way to point their bloody fingers toward us. So if we're going by his logic, Black people, who are the parents, we've been around longer than them, should have the right to stone white people, because they're the ones who are out here committing mass genocide, destroying the environment. The list of their crimes goes on and on. But they'll never flip it onto what they do. It's just really just a justification for their savagery, right? And the religion has always been a way to justify, their savagery. It's like when remember Ani talked about the asili, or the germ seed of European culture. Christianity is not a European religion, but Christianity was tailored to fit the European asili, right? Their worldview, right? So their general worldview, the way they view society, the religion was formatted to fit them, their world, to fit them, not the other way around. They didn't change themselves; they changed the religion, right? So this is just nonsense he's talking about. But Black Christians don't really have anything. This is something that a lot of them don't want to come to terms with. And they will argue that this has nothing to do with Christianity. Jesus never taught that, so on and so forth, right? And they'll overlook all the passages in the Bible that supports slavery, right? They'll ignore the things in the Bible that talk about Black people. In the Song of Solomon, the woman says she's beautiful, she is Black, but beautiful. Like, I'm Black, but I'm pretty too. Like, what the fuck? But they'll gloss over that, that type of stuff in the biblical record, because they believe it. So Black Christians don't really have anything. But I think what you'll find, there are some Black Christians who may be misguided enough to believe and to follow this type of nonsense, to think that this is something worth talking about. And I've seen, I know some people who are devoutly religious who fall into that trap. They're the ones who were saying, "Oh, Charlie Kirk didn't hurt anyone," all the other stuff. That was kind of their thing. So I could definitely see where somebody who might be too deep in, to follow this to its natural conclusion. I'll let Bwana speak. Thank you.
Good stuff, Black Steel. Yeah, I was going to address that whole thing of them being the parents too, as a follow-up. But in the meantime, let me hear from Bwana, and if there's still an opportunity, I'll follow up with that parents of the Black race thing. But Bwana, what say you?
Yeah, me personally, Coco, I think that this conversation is a staged conversation, and it's completely what they say in bad faith. They're trying to humanize a very racialized conversation. If you are trying to have a conversation like this, talking about groups of people, why not invite a person like Black Steel in the room and see whether that idea would fare well in the marketplace of ideas? And so, because the comments that's being made is going unchallenged. It's a completely subjective conversation. It's not an objective conversation. So but even though they're talking with calm voices, it would give you the impression that that what they are saying is rationally sound and commonsensical, because no one is there, no other person is in the room to refute any ideas that they quoting, and they use statistics. And since most people don't know statistics, the statistics can be manipulated completely and taken out of context. They use that as a barometer of truth telling. Put the statistic out there. But let's just say, I'm going to tackle the question in a minute. But let's just say, even if we use the statistics of murder, as Black Steel say, Black men, they're talking about arrests. They're not talking about the people who are committing an actual act of murder itself. To be charged with a crime is not the same thing as to be convicted of a crime. These are two different things. So if you look at the arrest record, of course, you may see a disproportionate amount of people arrested for murder. But what they leaving out of the conversation too, when he deals with statistics, as Black Steel suggested, is the amount of men, disproportionately Black men, let out of prison after 30, 40, 50 years, where the state have to pay individuals into the millions of dollars for accusations levied against Black men who have been charged with murder and who was convicted of murder, only to find 10 decades later that these people were innocent. There's no mention of that conversation, and it's a disproportionate amount of Black men who have been exonerated. No conversation about that. But in terms of the question itself, when for this prompt, when you say what do Black Christians have in common, I personally think, in particular to the Western people in the Western world, it's tradition. It's tradition. They've been doing it since we get here. This whole idea and notion of church, it's a westernized tradition on Sundays. This is what the Western man does in the West, including the slave and the slave owners. Including the slave. So it's tradition. That's what they have in common. It's a traditional act that westernized people do, even in the Caribbean and even in Africa, because they've been colonized by these kinds of people. So it's a tradition, number one. Number two, I would say the whole savior complex. Now, people may get frustrated in saying this, but if you go throughout the Black churches in much of the Christian world, you will see the same white that white handsome guy with the straight nose and the long hippie hair and stuff like that. That has been consistent. So the white Christians see the savior as they see themselves as well, because they see themselves as saviors of the world. But unfortunately, the Black Christian man does too. He may deny that and say God has no color. He may deny that and say, well, we don't see things like that anymore. That's an old part. But the reality is, it's a reason why Black women in the Western world have blonde hair. It's a reason why they act out the things that they do. They want to get closer and closer to their Lord and Savior. That savior complex is still in the minds of many people. So that is another thing they have in common. That white savior is embedded in the minds of many Christian people, and even non-Christian people, if I'm really being honest. But that is still there, and that is a challenge that the Black Christians have yet to overcome. So these two things, I believe, that the white Christians and the Black Christians have in common in the Western world.
I appreciate that, Buana. This gives me an opportunity to say something too. When I look at when I think about shoot the breeze and things like that, I think about it should be to challenge whatever status quo our people find themselves in, not to. And this is no diss to anyone. This is no knock on anyone, but this is why I kind of don't believe in you got to meet people where they are, because how long are you going to be in this stupor? How long are you going to hear, as a Black Christian, how long are you going to hear that and know to yourself that you only have this religion because it was beaten into your ancestors? Forget about that whole Ethiopian Bible, all that BS. How long are you going to follow this stuff? I think about my Rastafarian brothers. How long are you going to keep beating the drum to the Judeo-Christian Bible and Judeo-Christian principles? I used to work I think I told you all this before, but I'll say it again. I used to work in a rodent lab. I used to do research in a rodent lab years ago. And one of the things I learned that's interesting is if you forget the cage of a rat or a mouse partially open overnight, that animal will come out the cage. And you might think to yourself, well, shit, once that animal gets out that cage, they're going to run to all corners of this lab and we'll never find them again. And no, you know where those animals reside after they get out the cage? Right somewhere around the cage. So it's like you get out of a thing, but did you really get out of a thing? Right? Even in consciousness, you still got people who are conscious Christians and all that. You got out of a thing, but did you really get out of a thing? So that's one of the things I want us to really consider here when we do shoot the breeze. And it's not just with this topic. Like I can hear now someone saying we're beating up on Christians. It's not just this. It's Islam. It's language. It's language too. This notion, it came up last week that we have these Africans who speak French and Spanish, and we gotta, you've been doing this long enough now. You support we got to get out of this stuff now. It's time that we start making the moves to get out of this. And so a topic like this, I think, is a good one in the sense of I want people to pause who claim this stuff like Buana just outlined and Black Steel. Like you have this white savior in common with these people. Why do you do that? Why are you doing that? What benefit is it for you to follow in this shit that these guys are talking about? And to Buana's point, these guys don't have anyone in the room to counter. Of course they don't. They damn sure ain't gonna have one of us in the room. They damn sure ain't gonna have Black Steel in the room who's gonna tear all that shit to pieces that they're talking about. So this is a conversation really for their people that we happen to capture, right? Because it's on social media, right? And we happen to capture it, but we have to start using this stuff to tell our people, man, hey, you have to get out of that. And if you're worrying about something to fall into, go study your West African ancestors, man. There's a spirituality to go fall your ass right into. You know what I mean? But let's talk about it. I know Black Steel touched on it. What is this paternalism about from white folks? And what's the message we want to get out to Black folks about getting out from under this paternalism? This thing of the father takes the child out into the square and stone him and all that kind of shit. Like Black Steel said, and we are the fathers. We should be stoning you assholes. But what is it about these white folks and their paternalism? And as Buana has said in the past, our going along with it. What's that about? Buana, what say
you? Explain that. Rephrase the question, Coco. Rephrase it for me, because I don't know. I won't be clear on what the question is.
Yeah, no. The video talks about they speak of. In fact, if you need me to play it again, I'll play it again. But in the video,
yes,
they talk about.
I didn't catch it at all. I didn't catch it at all.
Oh, you didn't catch the video? Oh, no. Hold on, man. Let me play it again so that we all on the same page. Hold on a second.
Number of blacks who are committing murder is the actual number of blacks who are committing murder is more than whites. Right. And whites are significantly greater.
60% compared to 13%
percentage of the population. Yeah.
So if you take that and then you took a law like Deuteronomy 21, which is a just law that God enacted through Moses, the law was that if you had a rebellious son, you have a child they're coming up into their manhood and they're rebellious, they don't listen. He lists some characteristics and even though they're disciplined, they will not turn. He says the fathers to bring them out into the town square. This is a rebellious son, and then they stone him to death. They kill him.
And an armed robber would certainly be one of those.
Oh, absolutely. Armed robber, all the ghetto
violent
culture.
crimes.
Basically, take ghetto culture, it would describe this to a T. If you did that over 3 generations, how much violent crime would you have in the 3rd and 4th generation? Much, much less.
The actual.
Yeah, so that's the full context of the prompt. Whereas you see, they start talking about they're using biblical code, but talking about the father takes the son up to the square, and how ghetto culture, which is just code for Black people, right? We supposed to basically they're saying they're supposed to take them out into the square and start exterminating us. And what would you have after 2 and 3 generations? So that's what I was referring to, Buana. That paternalism. Where do you think that comes from in them? And why do we say
I know. Yes, I know. See, what this guy, this is the reason why I say read both sides, study as much as you can about the world. I read a book by this guy named Thomas Sowell. Okay, I know Black Steel doesn't like Thomas Sowell, but Thomas Sowell wrote a book called Black Rednecks and White Liberals. In that book, he speaks mainly of the traditions of cracker culture, redneck culture. And what happened is, what his argument in the book is, that a lot of the culture we see today is connected from the rednecks coming from some of the savage places in the UK and Ireland, Scotland, going to the southern plantations, and the blacks in them areas learn from who is around them and lording over them for many, many years. So when you talk about this paternalistic culture, or ghetto culture, you're really talking about redneck culture. And if you want to kill someone, you don't start with the children, you start with the parents. So in fact, he is the rank and file. People don't understand these things because they just label this thing as ghetto culture. But ghetto culture is just redneck culture. That's what they get from the hills or where they came from, and brought it to the West. That's where that come from. And that was his argument in the book. I don't know if people really buy into that. But if to say that to your audience, you're really cutting 99% of my God. Because the Hatfield and McCoys, well, who they used to talk about, the Hatfield and McCoys in some areas, and their ideas of disrespect and all these other, it is directly linked to that. That's where that came from. So if you kill the black culture, you're really killing yourself. You're really killing yourself. And I feel like there's a lot of projecting that goes on. You project off onto other groups. Black people in America, the Jews, certain groups have always been scapegoated for whatever reason. So you're trying to scapegoat all the ills of what you put into these people off onto everyone, off onto other people. But it's really about you. It's an internal thing. And these white guys will never accept that. But it is what it is. I think that it's a challenge, but I think that it's a solvable challenge. I think that with people like Black Steel teaching the white kids every week, hopefully he distributes them of this nonsense.
Funny enough, thank you for that, Buana. But funny enough, and I'm going to ask Black Steel in a second, but a lot of black folks reject that Thomas Sowell stuff about cracker culture coming from these poor whites and stuff like that. But I will say, one of the reasons why I think it's somewhat feasible is when you study like Garvey, for example. Garvey's preaching patterns, the way his cadences and stuff, he got it from a white guy. He got it from a white minister. I think there was a time when people got a lot of shit from them. So that's the only reason why I think it's a little bit feasible, but a lot of black folks push back against what Thomas Sowell says. The matron says, "Greetings, everyone. Sorry I'm late." Matron, you're not late. You're right on time, man. I appreciate you being here. BBN, Black Business Network, that's Brother Bakari, says, "I don't like Sowell either. He claims that we have no culture connection to Africa. He claims all of our culture comes from white people, but he refused to debate it." Yeah, very interesting. Black Steel, I know you touched on the paternalism aspect a little bit earlier. What else would you like to add? And would you like to speak on Thomas Sowell and his idea of cracker culture, black culture coming from poor whites?
The less said about Sowell, the better. All right. I can't stand that guy. His methodology and his research is just completely ass backwards. He goes out of his way. I mean, he really goes out of his way to just ignore racism. But what this man is saying, he's calling for genocide, basically, right? When he's talking about eliminating the people over 3-4 generations, he's calling for genocide. He wants to have a mass slaughter of African people, right? And he wants to justify it as they're the ones who are committing crime. So that's all he's doing. He's literally calling. It's genocidal talk. He's referencing the Old Testament, which is actually mentioned genocide several times in the Bible. We could talk about that before, but yeah, he's really talking about genocide is what he's referring to, and he just wants to use the Bible as a justification for that, because you would never hear him say anything like that about dealing with school shooters, right? All these white women raising these teenage boys to grow up and hate everybody. He would never say we should, wipe them out by using God's perfect law given to Moses. He would never mention that. So he's really just a racist. I don't think what he says has any. He's just a racist. He looks like a racist. He looks like he would burn a cross in your yard. Truth be told. I mean, what's that in the background? Some sort of European goddess. He looks like a fascist too. So just overall, this guy here is just, he's full of it, and he's just He's referring to genocide in a nice way, trying to say it's God's will, but he's really referring to murdering mass amounts of people to so-called get crime down, right? That's the justification. Well, back in the day, used to lynch black people, hang us from trees, set us on fire, cut off our genitals, and mutilate us, and every type of horrible torture they could do to black people. And they would do that as a way, as they said, protecting the virtue of white women. That was their excuse. If a black person raped a white woman, they would lynch him. Or if a black person brushed up against a white woman too hard, he had too much bass in his voice when he told a white bitch good morning, they want to string you up from a tree. But in reality, if we look at the real reasons for lynching, it was really to reinforce the racial order that existed at the time. If a black person was becoming too successful or he had too much pride in himself, the lynching was a way. It's a public murder. It's done in public. It's done in front of your whole community to let you know how powerless you are. That's what this man is referring to. He wants to bring back genocide, lynching. And this excuse, instead of protecting the virtue of the white woman, in reality, it's a way to protect us from the burgeoning crime rates. Even though, if you go look at the numbers, crime is down. Crime has been steadily decreasing. Over the last 20 years, crime rates have dropped significantly. And then on top of that, these people who claim to be so focused on eliminating crime, but they don't want to ever deal with the true sources of the causes of crime. Crime is an effect. It's an effect of poverty. It's an effect of inequality. It's an effect of no no social systems being put in place. That's why people commit crime. Yeah, you're gonna find a few people that are just, you're gonna find a few serial killers here and there. You're gonna find a few ne'er-do-wells. But the true root of criminality comes from impoverishment. And they know that. White people know this. They were also, we know in our history, when European immigrants came to America, they were the main ones committing crime. Everybody here's heard of the paddy wagon, right? They police lock people up in the paddy wagon. That came from Irish people. You call Irish people paddies for St. Patrick, right? So the paddy wagons, when they would get Irish people and lock them up. So the Irish in America were synonymous with criminality. But what happened is that they made a space for them within the large American system. They gave them land out west. They incorporated into the fire department, then the police department. They were basically assimilated into American culture. And all of a sudden, they're no longer criminalized. Not to say these people don't commit crime, because we know they do. Every time you look at the movie or a TV show, you got some white person group glorifying crime. Goodfellas, Carlito's Way, Scarface, The Sopranos. It's all this white criminality. They make movies about it and win Academy Awards for it. But let a black person steal from a grocery store. Let a black person steal a car. You see, it's retarded. Go ahead, Juan. I'm gonna cut you off. I'm talking.
And black steel, it's always street crime. And I would only remind these guys that child molestation is a crime too. The last time I checked, having intercourse with animals is also a crime too. These are numbers where you see a disproportionate a number of people from coming from their side. It's so skewed. It's so skewed. They don't never talk about that. That is also a crime. Child trafficking. That is also a crime too. So when you talk about crime and criminality, don't just resort to small street crime. Let's extend it to the greater world and talk about crimes that we consider to be heinous as well. Another thing too, because I want to get back to this thing of lynching, this punishment. There's a feature in the lynching that these guys never mention, and I never knew this prior to reading a particular book. The after lynchings, uh, the white men used to cut off the penises of black men and eat them. And that's a weird thing. That's very strange because you're punishing people and then you're cutting off their nether parts and storing them in jars and eventually consuming them. These are things that the Western world and white male don't like to talk about. The extent of what your punishment is. If you punishing them and then afterwards you consuming them, psychologically something is going on. Something is off in this picture. So I just, like I say, I think that there should be objectivity in a room like this. You invite a Black American person in the room to be able to have a real dialogue. But like Black Steel says, this is just a stage event to pilfer their racism. It's really all about that, and they're doing it in a very calm, a sophisticated way. But we know about scientific racism, well dressed, well-meaning, very wealthy men committing heinous acts and having ridiculous philosophies, doing it and say, "Well, we are educated, and this is what we should. This is what we have for you, Black people, right here. We're gonna lobotomize you. We're gonna give you a vasectomy so you won't procreate." It's all genocide, a nice version of genocidal talk, you know. But I agree with you, Black Steel, completely, brother.
Appreciate that, Buana. Yeah, the caveat, and I agree with Black Steel too. The caveat is that they would say uh, those are non-violent crimes. This is what they would say versus apparently ghetto culture is violent crime. That's how they would try to get around it. But what they don't do, as one of the people under the post mentioned, they don't talk about the history of violent crime. The people looking just like this guy on screen carried out for hundreds of years and still carrying out in some form or fashion right now. That's the problem with this whole conversation. But again, the idea is, why would a person who's Black, who says they're Christian, why would they remain under this banner when they could clearly see and hear the same things we see and hear? Why are you staying? And I know you say tradition, but traditions are broken all the time, you know. But with that said, let's welcome in Brother Bakari. Brother Bakari, how are you this week?
I'm good, man. What's going on? What's going on to the panel, to the chat? You had sent me that, and I heard them talking about it. But for me, shit, that's just how I believe. You know what that's what they believe. They want to kill Black people, and they had an opportunity to talk about it. I don't give a damn about them folks, but you're right. The history of everything that they have done, that their whole culture has been crime, rape and rob and kill. That's been their whole culture. But what they have uh done, and I heard Bawana say sophisticated racism, what they have done, they have taught Black people that Black people are the problem. And Black people take Black people out, because if you hear people talk, who's it? Black people ops is always somebody Black. So we follow their lead in every way, with the exception of, we can go back to last week when everybody thought it was okay to publicly ish on Black women and try to put all Black women in one box. You never hear them ishing on the white women that raise these damn mass murderers. You never hear them doing that. So we, because I don't like to use this word, but I don't use this term. I have my reasons why people don't agree, but that's okay. But for the sake of this, I'm going to use it. So, in essence, Black people have become just as great. A lot of Black people have become just as great white supremacists as these white people here, because they're not ishing on their own people publicly, talking about how bad they are and they are the problem. They are clearly saying we are the problem. So then when we get a mic and put a mic in our hand and we can talk and people can hear it, we're our problem. We are the N-word. Our Black women is our problem. And these YNs and everything else is our problem. Not saying that we don't have any problems, but we tend to do it publicly. So we, in essence, and I'm saying we, and I know all of us don't do it, but we, in essence, follow their lead. We follow their lead. We feel about ourselves the way they feel about us. I asked a question one time. I was on Kofi panel. Bawana heard it. I say, what's the identity? Because everybody say we're in an identity crisis. I said, we're not in an identity crisis. We have chosen, I don't use this word, but we have chosen the worst thing on earth. What the white supremacists did, what What these people did to our ancestors would lynch them and rob them and rape them, and the last word they would hear would be the N word. Now we have chosen it. A lot of us have chosen it to be our identity. So we, in essence, have followed their lead. So when we talk bad about them, right? We don't have to go publicly and talk about us, but we have to look at ourselves and like, why? If it's not okay for them to do it, it shouldn't be okay for us to do it. See, because once we get to the point where it's not okay for us to do it, it won't be okay for them to do it. They're okay with it now because then the roles reverse. They hear us talking about it publicly. So they ain't gonna say nothing. Shit,
But
oh, wait, but why I ain't cut you off? Y'all don't spoke. I'm gonna let you speak. I ain't gonna be on too much long. But in essence, right? So the lunatic in office, his biographer, what did he say the black man's problem is? Oh, the loudmouth black woman. I wonder where they get that from. So in essence, we became right, but then they can follow and they can say this stuff publicly because we do it. We are taking leads from them. When you think about it, you will understand what I'm saying. Now you can go with one.
okay, so just consider this, Brother Bakari, because you say that uh, the white man don't ish on his woman publicly, and I would say consider if you watch any Hollywood movie, in particular horror movies, the white man has killed his woman in the movie all the time. You know what I mean? He publicly is murder her, or what happened in the horror movie? The white woman screams, she ran in the forest, she falls down, and then he murders her. I mean, this is a standard modus operandi of any Hollywood film, horror film you ever could. He always murdering his woman on film, bro. Publicly. He shows you what he thinks about her because he's always murdering her. You know, so I don't know. I would say that, like you say, I would agree that we take a lot of us, not all of us, take the lead of the white man, in particular with how we perceive our women as well. Because they since they've been doing it in Hollywood for years, and we follow that up with our ideas of misandry, well, whatever the word is, but we follow that with ideas of female disgust and hatred as well. So I agree with that point of we parrot a lot of their ideas as well. I agree with that.
Okay, but for the record,
Any
I
other?
want you to know, I didn't just say how I wouldn't just I used a woman for an example, but I was talking about how we see each other and treat ourselves. We see each other and think about ourselves the way they are the way they're talking about a lot of time. I mean, I'm saying we, of course, it's not nobody on this panel, nobody in the chat. I'm saying we because I'm just not separating myself, right? I'm not separating nobody because I'm saying we as a people. But that's how we see ourselves a lot of the time. The thing, and then that's what we say about ourselves. So am I okay with what they're saying? Now that's how they feel. No, I'm not okay with it, but I've been preparing for this. I've been mentally and all that preparing for this my whole life. So in the time it's just about here. Don't nobody really want it to happen because it's it's scary, but everything they're talking about they want to do to us. Shit, we can do to them. It's just that simple.
So let me couple things. It's no surprise to me when a black person has repeats a lot of these racist views. I'm not saying it's right, but I mean, is it any wonder the whole world from the time you're born is basically telling you niggas ain't shit? I mean, it's so common now. People don't even realize they're saying it. But we live in an anti-black world, an anti-black society. It's no wonder that black people have internalized these viewpoints that the white races hold about us. You know, and it's everywhere. It takes a strong force of will to combat that. But to your point, why do black people still hold to this religion of white people? A lot of times it's tradition. A lot of us, that's all we know. Um, you grew up going to church. You grew up going to church at your grandma's house, and Sunday school and things like that. That's what you know. So it's normal. I think in the newer generations, right, we're starting to see less and less people adhering to the religion. And I've noticed that just dealing with younger people, you don't see as many people, young people, going to church or being raised and singing. I mean, you can tell that. Just look at the music situation. A lot of our great singers, they got their music training from the church. That's why the R&B is so bad now. So I think we're seeing less of that, less church attendance, more people who are tending to become, if not agnostic, or looking into atheism, or looking into traditional African religions. You're starting to see that more. But I say that just to say that we Black people who believe in Christianity, it's been 400 years. It's a hard. I'm not saying it's impossible. It needs to be done. We need to question this religion, because the religion of Christianity, again, Christianity was in Africa before it was in Europe. But the Christianity that most Black people in the United, especially the U.S. and the Western Hemisphere, believe in is straight Protestantism, Calvinism, Episcopalian, Baptist, all that other stuff. That's what Black people have internalized. That's what we have to deal with. And we got to come to terms with it. What does that mean? We're going to lose a lot of people when we come to terms with that, because that religion is so deeply ingrained, because they connect religion with morality, right? You can't live a good life without God. You're nothing without God, they say. Unless you have God in your life, you're nobody. So these people are coming from mothers and fathers and grandfathers and everything else, who are basically telling them these things, that you need religion, you need God in your life. And again, they don't connect it with the way we connect it with the history of Christianity. You know how many people don't know nothing about the history of Christianity? Most Christians don't read their Bible. And that's Black Christians and white Christians. They don't know what we're talking about. They don't understand the thing. They would swear up and down, I'm doing this because I want to, because it's my own free will. They have no idea the history of Christianity, how Black people became Christian through slavery. They don't know, and they don't want to know. It's a lot of ignorance that is going along in society. And a lot of people don't want to deal with that. There's a lot of unpleasant, uncomfortable realities that come from our adherence to Christianity and Islam and the other Abrahamic religions. And you got people like this. You find yourself on the same faith as a Klan member, which this guy basically is. He may never call himself a Klan member, but he's sitting up here talking about eliminating Black people for 20, 30 years. He's a Klan member. That's all he is. And that's all what he wants to do, is genocide the Black race. And he wants to use the crime stats to justify it. But it's no wonder that so many of us have trouble releasing this Christianity and religious belief, because that's what we were brought up in. You went to church with your grandma. She had you singing in the choir. You had put on for the Christmas play. We don't associate it with the history, because we don't know the history. All we know is the good, happy memories. And then when you fall on tough times, it does give you some comfort. You have the Lord looking out for you. But we don't connect the history and connect the dots. And I think that's probably why it's not taught the way it needs to be taught as African people. So I'll leave it there.
Black Steel. If you connecting Christianity with morality, right? The question now becomes, okay, so without Christianity, there's no morality. So when the slaves was brought in, didn't know Christianity, they were immoral people. Had to have been. So to moralize them, it's really to moralize them, you have to impose your ideas of morality on them vis-a-vis Christianity. So thank God for slavery, because it got us from an immoral state to a currently a moral state. That's one thing. Another thing too
You
is
get it. You get it. You're absolutely right.
oh yeah. Another thing is that another thing is, yes, I do see a falling away with the younger people in terms of the traditionalism, what they've been practicing for a long time. Not only with Christianity, with other modes of human activity. There is a slow falling away from the fundamental institutions that they grew up with. My question becomes, what is it going to get replaced with? Now you say that there are many people who are turning to African traditional religions, which is fine, But I am curious to know, since we living in the Western world, first of all, is African traditionalism practiced in the Western world going to be effective for the advancement of Black people currently? And if you say no, what do you replace that with? Which will, in terms of what will be effective in us advancing ourselves as a people going forward in this part of the world? You understand my question, or no?
Yeah, I do. I think what we can organize it with. I mean, we have really. I've always say shared struggle, right? We are oppressed because we are African people, and it is that shared struggle that unites us. We're not going to see eye to eye on everything. We're not going to see eye to eye on, they have different beliefs, even speak the same language, but we do have a shared struggle, a shared condition based on our Blackness. Some people feel that's not enough. I don't know. Garvey thought it was enough. Malcolm thought it was enough. I think that that's something that we have that shared struggle. But another thing too, and this is, I guess, part of the issue with the religion, is that a lot of people believe that the struggle is divinely ordained, right? Black people was, like you said, one that Black people were savages. If we didn't have God, we didn't know anything about God or whatnot, and so our oppression is done as a way to bring us to our Savior. And so in a way, it justifies the dehumanization of African people because we were savages, We were, the man who wrote Amazing Grace, he was a slave, he wrote it on a slave ship. He's a wretch like he was. He says he repented of his sin, but how many Africans did he free? But he talks about, but again, this was understood back then, and it was a necessary good. We were the children of Ham. Our enslavement was ordained to bring us to the gospel. We're talking about eating people, right? Cannibalism was the justification that the Spanish used to enslave the natives of the Caribbean. Oh, the Caribs are cannibals and so on and so forth, and they need to be brought to the light of Christ. And meanwhile, here we are learning about them cutting out Black people's penises and eating them during lynchings. Who's the cannibal? It's always, I think that shared struggle should be enough to unite us. We're all, no matter what you believe in, whether you're Brazilian or you're from Latin America, we go through the things we go through because we're Black, right? And we are surrounded by white supremacists who want to reinforce and control the world, and they mean to do so by our bodies. So I would say just that's my thoughts on that.
Y'all bear with me. My computer is sluggish again. I was supposed to clear up some space and I forgot to do it during the week. But I know Brother Bakari had to step down. He said he'll be back. Is there any last thoughts on this problem before we go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 2? All right, good discussion, fellas. Let's get right into it. Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 says, how would y'all feel if your sons brought home Becky? Would we feel the same way like their fathers if they were racist? This came with a link that's taken us to Twitter again. Make sure you guys can see my screen. You can. On Twitter, this is a post from Just Posting Els. It says, every father's worst nightmare. So this looks like a prom picture. All right. It looks like a prom picture. Let me see if there's more to it. Someone called Post by Fed says, undersized heels on their daughters are definitely a nightmare material for dads. The person who posted said, that's exactly my thoughts, but apparently some people took it differently. So this is one of these clown type posts. Someone else says, strange phenomenon, that awkward moment when you haven't unlocked your boyfriend as a playable character yet. So some white women and some dark-skinned men. But this is the image. every father's worst nightmare is the caption, and the prompt says, how would you feel? How would y'all feel if your sons brought home Becky? We feel the same way like their fathers if they were racist? That's a very interesting question. We start with Buana on this one. Buana, what are your thoughts on this?
I would feel like a failure. And let's get past the human conversation. I would feel like a failure because if I get this thing right, then all of my son impressions in terms of womanhood would be a woman who I would be comfortable with, a woman who looked like me, from my background, sometimes from even my culture, but background, history, heritage. I don't see, I would see where I went wrong. Where I went wrong. And you could call me a racist if you want to. That's fine. In terms of how this conversation is getting couched, if they were racist, I guess I'm a racist because my introduction to my son would be that of a black woman who is productive, good, kind, respectful, all these kind, and have a certain kind of disposition. I don't personally think that you're going to inherit that from Becky. Now, in the Bahamas, we even have European people here. We have white people here who speak Bahamian and all that good stuff. But I see a disconnect. For me, there's a cultural disconnect, and I'd have to ask myself, where did I go wrong? Because my thing ultimately is to give my son the impression that black women are the greatest. They're the greatest. You know what I mean? So how he would resolve that equation in getting a white lady, I would feel like I something went wrong. I did something wrong. And ain't no slight on nobody, but I would feel like I did something wrong. That's what I would say.
All right. I appreciate that. Buana Black Steel, how would you feel?
Well, it's time for confession, guys. It's time for confession. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. My son took a white girl to the prom. Well, she was like a spicy white, right? She was a spicy white. She was a Colombian white girl. But you know what? That didn't last very long. It was like a fun thing. They had fun, and then it kind of drifted apart. So it wasn't like a long term thing. But I say that to say, just overall, I prefer in the perfect world, I want my children to be with black people. I want them to be with members of their own race, to procreate and build a life and build a family with another black person. That's what I want. That's what I think is what's best for our people in the long run. I think that we need to want to reproduce and build with each other and build families with each other. And I think that's something I want. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. Everybody don't agree with me on this. I don't believe all people are created equal. If he got with somebody who was, say, Aboriginal Australian, or somebody from Samoa, I wouldn't trip. I don't think I'd be as upset. Okay, you got with somebody, they might be black, but at least they're not white. That's how I would look at it. But yeah, I would prefer, in all ways, to be with a person of African descent. That would be my desire. That's what I would like, and I would feel like if you couldn't see any beauty within your own people, within your own people group, within your own race, what happened? Where did I go wrong? I didn't teach you to value your own people. You know, where do we mess up at? Where do we decide that black people was not the standard of beauty? And I think that a lot of times these young people get a lot of messages about black inferiority, right? And you hear this in a lot of these dating shows. These women that want to date a white man because the white man gonna treat you better, and so on and so forth. And you know, it's it's so common, right? And then when you finally hear it, like growing from a young person's mouth, I don't want to date somebody dark skinned. I don't want dark skinned people, right? There's this whole thing about in Latin America about dating, like improving the race, bettering the race, right? So that's the whole thing. That blackness is seen as something dirty or something wrong with us, and these ideas are internalized by our young people. Every time you cut on TV, you see a biracial woman. Usually, she with a white dude, which is crazy because white people treat their biracial members worse than black people ever have. But no, honestly, I would feel like, what is it that is this something you went out because you actually like this person, or you saw something and you thought it was an upgrade? I got me a white person now. I'm stepping my game up. Is that how you feel? I would be concerned about that.
Yeah, I would. You would have to sit down and because I would want to sit down and talk to my son and ask him, well, what's the thinking here? Is this thinking brought out of you thought that this person, was the better person, or it's just you think just because they? I wouldn't want to know what their thinking is. Even listen, man. At the end of the day, I can't force you can't force your children to do something which you ain't into. At the end of the day, but I would just want to paint the best picture possible in terms of what I like and pray that that person, my children, want the same thing. And even with the best social engineering, trigger happy. Even with the best social engineering with children are random, bro. They random, so they can do what they can do regardless. But I would want the best image and ideas in their head to come from themselves first before it comes from any other groups of people. That's what I would say.
So I respect the way you guys answered that. I do, because you answered it from a personal thing as a black man and as a father. The one pushback I would have is I don't know if children are that random when you have put your stamp on them, so to speak. When you raise them with a standard and a certain outlook. I don't know, because I asked my sons this question not too long ago. And in fact, I ask them every so often. And without having to lead them or anything, they tell me straight up they're not trying to bring no white woman home. And the second thing I'm going to just touch on lightly. I'm not going to try to get into a whole thing here, but I would have to question, like these guys in this picture. I'd have to question: is your mother around? Because I find it hard to see that you would bring these lily white chicks around when you have a black mother at home. And this is why I wish there was a black woman on the panel to speak to that. What is going on with your relationship with your mama that you would bring home these white women? Am I off?
The panel might jump me, but I got some things I got to say. Number one, right? Schools are integrated, right? So a lot of times, children are going to be around a lot of different races of people. It used to be where black people went to majority black schools. Now you have schools where you have all the races mixed with each other. You have blacks and whites, Hispanics, Asians, and everything going to school. So for one, these young men are exposed to a lot more. Two, children are naturally rebellious, right? And I think that's something that children like to push boundaries. You can tell a child not to do something all till you're blue in the face. But at some point, they're going to want to try to push back because, hey, that's what kids do, you know. Two, another thing, that may be very well what these white girls are doing. These white girls trying to piss off their daddy, get daddy upset, go to the prom with a black boy. But are they going to marry these boys? Are they going to be in a long-term relationship with these guys? Probably not. interracial relationship rate is still pretty low in the United States. It's not like it's half or even that much. It's pretty low. Most black people tend to marry and date within their own race. These white girls could just be doing that because they want to give their dad, upset him, get under his skin. I don't think that this is something that, it's the father's worst nightmare. But I'm pretty sure she's going to end up dating. Because what I've noticed and what I've experienced is that white women will have fun with, especially a lot of them have fun with black men. They love the black phallus. They love their black penis. But are they going to, when it comes time to settle down and get married, they'll hurry up and they'll marry some, square white dude and have a couple kids from him after they spent their 20s, having fun with black guys or Latino guys or white dudes that wasn't no good. They'll be like, okay, well, I had my fun. Let me settle down. And a lot of people recognize it. Oh, she's sowing her wild oats or whatnot. And it's just seen as a natural thing. Not saying it's okay, but I think that because schools are integrated, we're going to have um, a lot of contact with people of different races. That's not going to change anytime soon, right? But and overall, I think that what we see is that for most black people, they tend to want to be with other black people. It's not really a situation where black people just out the blue just want to be with white people, except, you do have those swirlers, you have the divestors, you have those people who legit feel as though being with any race except black people is a benefit, right? But you know what? Most black peoples aren't Pan African nationalists. My mom ain't a Pan African nationalist, but I will say, growing up, I was told she can't use your comb. Don't bring her home. You know, she don't want.
Black
Yeah,
black. When you look at these pictures, I
yeah,
don't. I look at these pictures and I see like these are hostages, because
really,
if you really think about it, the power dynamic is completely skewed. Here's what I mean in saying that: if any of them white girls was to just say anything happened that night, that they, let's say, oh, he kissed me and I didn't want to kiss him, that's 30 years automatically off of just saying that. And the black guy in the picture could say, "Oh, it didn't happen that way." He could scream, and yeah, all she has to do is just say, "Oh, he touched my butt and I didn't want him." That's 15 years. What are you gonna? They are completely vulnerable, brother. The power dynamic is completely with them two little innocent little white angels. You know what I mean? All they just need to do just is say something off, and the time that these brothers are spent in jail it would be dramatic. It would be dramatic. The power dynamic is completely off. I don't see two consenting adults going to the prom or whatever, four consenting adults. I see two black men who are completely in a completely vulnerable situation, and they don't know how vulnerable they are right now. Because like I say, all Becky has to do is fall on and say he pushed me, and that's 30 years. Easy, easy, easy. And all of us know it. But
yeah.
these
You're
these
right.
brothers don't see the danger. They don't see that danger because they're young, they ain't live long enough, and they don't understand enough about the world to know what could be the outcome of this innocent little thing they go into on one night. One night.
We really just talked about the high level of exonerations for black men, and I think that, truth be told, a lot of people are not teaching their children. And I'm seeing it a lot more with the new generation, Generation Alpha now. They're not teaching their children to be wary of white people. And I'm noticing that they're not teaching them, hey, you watch out for these white folks. That was something that was long, long ingrained. You got to watch out for these white folks. Keep your eye on them. And that's something they're not teaching their kids to watch, to be wary of white people. They're not teaching them, hey, watch your back. Don't be alone with these white women. That's something they're not being taught. And they really, unfortunately, they grow up thinking that we're all created equal and we can all do the same thing, and you can. Like you said, just one accusation. Oh, I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. And boom, your life is ruined. Your life.
Black Steel, I remember I was in university. I was in university in America, And me and this, I used to have this Italian friend at the time, and me and her we was in the study hall, and I was arguing with her, big time arguing with her, big time, because I'm dumb to these kinds of things. I'm a new person in the United States. I don't know nothing but nothing. She just a white girl from Philadelphia, who's Italian. So me and her, so a black lady pulled me out of the room and she say, Cohen, what are you doing? Say, Bawana, what are you doing? Say, she tell me that's a white girl. Don't you know how much problems you could get into? I didn't know. I didn't know. I was just having we was just having a regular conversation and rowing each other. And she's like, that is seen as a point of aggression here. You can't do these things. You can't do that. You know, it was so that kind of ignorance, if you ain't careful, you could be very vulnerable and out of place and out of pocket. And somebody just needs to pull these brothers' coat, and tell them to just be careful. Be careful, bro.
So I think that's where, and this is why I like Trigger Happy too. That's where Trigger Happy comes in right there. When Trigger said earlier that it's kind of lazy to say that children will just be random, you have to put in that effort. That's why I agree with Black Steel 100%. I think we're not putting in the effort. The reason why my children, when I ask them that question, could tell me now I'm bringing them a black room because I put in that effort. And my oldest son is not even 21 yet, right? But I put in that effort since they were small. I told them since they were small, don't think that you and these white folks could run and do the same shit and you can get off like they don't get off. So the effort has to be put in there. And I also like what Trigger said, too, is that the prompt itself is being presented to Pan-Africanists, right? The panelists and people around here should be Pan-Africanists. What are we doing? What are we teaching? What's the effort that we're giving our children? Are we just producing random children to start from scratch and gotta get the bruises like what Buana just described, arguing with an Italian woman and someone have to pull you to the side and kind of tell you, hey, don't do that, right? Are we raising random kids, or as Pan-African people, are we pushing a standard? And that's the thing I always talk about on Shoot the Breeze. Are we pushing a standard here? I think this is a chance to kind of give a teaching moment to folks who are watching, like, you know what? Turn to your black sons and tell them there's nothing greater than a black woman. Look at your mother. Your mother is a black woman. Why would you want to go bring home a white girl, even if it's just for the prom night, right? Where is that effort? I think that's really what the question is getting at, but I could be wrong. Let me see what our next panelist has to say. Let's welcome in Kofi this week. Kofi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad I was able to get in on this topic. It was a topic I found to be very interesting. Everyone, please partake in Discord. I'm seeing the activity there. But yeah, please take part in the Discord. Put whatever ideas of the topics that you want to put in there so we can discuss on Saturdays. It seems like you and I, Kuku, got the same. My oldest son, he's going to be 21. He's not been 21 yet, and he's in college right now. So he goes to Purchase College here in New York. And he's been going there for about 2 years. And one day, and he knows. And there was a moment where I was just so proud of him. So again, like I'm like 6'4", my son is like 6'2", 6'3", tall, big guy, right? So, dreads. So he's going to demand attention if you want it or not. People are going to look at him because he's tall, big guy. I was dropping him off to his dorm one day. And I dropped him off to his dorm, and it was like a Halloween party or something like that, right? And I dropped him off. I'm thinking, I was like, man, why are you playing? You're going to go to that party on other side. He's like, Dad, no, I'm good. I'm going right in my room, chilling, play PlayStation or whatever. I'm like, nah, for real, you're going to go? He's like, I'm not going to none of these parties with these people no more. I was like, why? What happened? He says, one day they were having a party, and I was looking for my friend. And, parties are normally crowded. People are bumping into each other, right? some white girl got somebody bumped to this white girl, or some white girl, somebody touched this white girl's butt, and she's looking at him like, "Oh, you touching my butt? You touched my ass? You touched my?" He's like, "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You touched my ass." He's like, "Oh," it's like, number one, what ass? And no, I didn't. And so he's like, "I'm not going back there or anything like that." He says, "Dad, white girl's tears will get you 20 years. I'm not messing with it." I'm like, wow, I saw my son became a man. And he has to literally beat these white girls off of him because he used to have a roommate and he no longer has a roommate. So now that these girls know he don't have a roommate, they some of them be chilling. He's cool. I'm like, hey, you don't have to, obviously you don't hate white people. Obviously that's not the point, but know who you are. And you said, "Dad, we're just friends." And I'm like, "Yo, when we got class tomorrow, anytime you need to get up out of here?" "Nah, I'll just spend the night here." He's like, "Oh, hell nah, you gotta go." You gotta go. So we have to train our son. And he was, I don't know if it's called this sexual assault, but he was sleeping one time. He fell asleep and he woke up. He was like, "What's going on here?" He dozed off. And the white girl was there, dozed off, and she took my son's hand and put it up her bra. He's like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "Boy, didn't I tell you about these white girls and how they are? She likes you. She's cool. Now, let's say you kicked her out and she felt a type of way. All she got to say is rape." He's like, "Yeah, Dad, I know. I was like, do not literally fall asleep on these chicks. Don't do it. You know what I'm saying? You're playing with your freedom. You're playing with your life. They are not worth it. They are not worth it. You know what I'm saying? And he doesn't play in the snow like that. You know what I'm saying? I believe myself or something like that. We could be cool, we could chill, but nah, I love black women. I'm sorry, I love my black women. You know what I'm saying? And he has enough sense to know, but hey, a young man is a young man. Not all of our young men are gonna be that strong, but we have to really home in on why. And again, I have family members that play in the snow and sometimes they get frostbite. You have to understand, again, in this day and age, it has nothing to do with hate. It has to do with how things have been since forever, for thousands of years. This is how it's been. Your legacy. You have to think of your legacy and not be so Romanesque in a way of thinking of romance. And no, this is your legacy, right? I made sure you have a black mother with a clear black Pan-African mindset, knowing that she's an African woman. You need to do the same, because if you don't, then what are we really doing here? And then you have kids, like I even say, my brother just plays in the snow all day. That's all he does. Make a whole bunch of bullshit excuses, right? Love my niece, love my nephew, right? But when you with these people, even though your spouse is cool, their parents could be racist, their brother could be racist, their grandpa could be racist. Why am I taking this fucking chance? To the point where my brother's wife, the grandfather is a fucking racist piece of shit. To the point where they don't want to leave my niece there because he's a racist piece of shit. Why are we putting ourselves in this fucking situation? And fuck anybody who says, oh, it's love. You can't help who you love. Bullshit. Yes, you can. There's a reason why you're not with a crackhead. There's a reason why you're not with an alcoholic. There's a reason why you're not married to a hoe or wife beater. So don't tell me you can't help who you love. You have a preference. You have a pool of people who you want to expose yourself to, and those are the pool of people that you, quote unquote, fell in love with. So I know I don't mean to be ranting or whatever, but I'm just trying to give you guys some examples of why this is important moving forward, because we have grown people still have grown black men and black women, especially with this gender war that we have within the black community, that we pretty much have to stop. And they think it's just a game because they're looking, oh, romance, 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 romance. You know what I'm saying? If you don't love yourself, you can't even love who you are. I read an article on BuzzFeed about this black woman who she was like younger, like in their 20s or whatever. Her and her husband have no, they're quote unquote fine, but she said she had to divorce her husband for her own mental sanity, because her in-laws were so racist. She basically saying it was a lot of microaggressions and things like that. So, and she said she was losing herself and herself as an identity. So now she's saying she doesn't want to be with black men. So it's something that we have to keep driving home. So that's pretty much it. I don't want to keep rambling.
What white girl tears will get you 20 years. That's the quote of the day. That's the quote of the day.
I was proud of him when he said that, man. I didn't leave this because I didn't know why. You in college, you're gonna act crazy, you want to party or whatever. And when he said that, he's like, nah, not doing it, Dad. I got a future ahead of me. I'm not messing with these women.
Yeah, that's what it looks like when you're not being random as a parent. I think, there's a lot of things we got to face with the black community within ourselves. And this is not me talking from a white talking point, because they don't even really talk about it like that. But it's just that we gotta be stronger in our dealings, especially when it comes to our children. If we want to carry on this resistance, if we don't be firm and teach them what to do. Again, I know humans are humans. Some might stray this side and the other, but it's our job to give them that grounding from young, so that they don't even consider that stuff. To bring home a white guy or a white woman. And I'll say something too, because I showed the comments on the screen, but Trigger made a point. We tend to, like Black Seal said earlier, if she can't use your comb, don't bring her home, right? But we kind of, a lot of us don't expand the thought. Why is that the case? And this is where you got to touch history. You got to touch history and say, listen, man, we don't have a good history with these people. Stay away from them people. There's nothing wrong with saying that. We don't have a good history with those people. Even like Black Seal mentioned a couple weeks ago when they offed Charlie Kirk. Even liberal whites were scolding black folks not to champion that murder, right? Even liberal white folks aren't your friends. So we got to put these things in that analysis of, man, historically we don't have a good go with these people. You stay away from them. Don't bring them home. Black Seal mentions that Kofi made a great point. Biracial children will always have bad odds because of their family, and the family has a high probability of despising them. Like, why would we sit by weekly, and I don't mean days of the week, I mean being weak and not instilling the right messages into our children so they could go on and fumble the whole thing by stand up in a picture like this instead of just standing there like that, but these white women with a pregnant belly instead. That's a failure on our part.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I want to stir the pot a little bit, because everybody is agreeing. So I got to stir the little pot. So I taking off my Garvey hat and I putting on my humanism hat. So here's the thing. When young people see the world, they see the world tabula rasa. They say, that's what they say, blank slate. So if I show in my dealings with women, in particular black women, that black women can be good, spirited, conscious, respectful, all the high-minded things you could think about, right? And as the brother said last week, right, because I could point to last week, that if that has not been their experience with the black women they have encountered, but I come across a Becky who have all the characteristics of my mother, She is respectful. She is kind. She does all the things character wise. Character wise.
Yeah.
Hear me out. Let me finish. Let me finish because I know you're all jumping in the bit. Hear me out. Character wise. What am I to do in that scenario? Should I refute her to jump at a person who is bringing me misery? Misery. Because I can talk from a young black man's perspective. Because they're looking at us and saying, well, we just old fashioned. We talking old politics talk. It's not like that anymore. I meet a woman who have all exemplary qualities of my mother. She just happened to don't have the same pigmentation as her. What do you do in that scenario? Because it's a real conversation since we're having one.
Let me quickly respond. Let me quickly respond to that. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, right, when someone points out some of the ills of black women and then you jump on them, right? You jump on them, you say the black woman is God, blah, 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 which is all great, right? You can't jump on a person when they point out certain things. You jump on them, and then the next week you come and you say, but if a white woman is this and that, and the black woman is exactly what people was talking about the week before. You can't have it both ways, right? So I'll say this. The same way you could find that in a white woman, you could find it in a black one. As a matter of fact, you'll probably find it quicker in a black woman. And another thing too, in the Bible, I'm not a biblical person, but I grew up around church. There's a woman in the Bible. I always think about this woman named Delilah, right? And she brought this man who a lot of people consider a black man, Samson, down, right? You got to understand too, when a white woman, especially a white woman, comes around a black man, you got to question, and this is something you got to teach your children. Why is she here? Why is she here? Kofi kind of touched on it earlier. You're 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", a college student, this, that, and the other. Why are you around me? So I would take it at a grain of salt that I found all these things in this white woman because, number one, why is she around me? And I will go look for that woman. The black woman is God. I'll go look for that woman in a black woman. I'll say that. Whoever wants to go next, I think Black Seal might have wanted to go, or Kofi.
I was gonna say very quickly, we're leaving something out of the equation, right? Talking about our sons, what about our daughters, right? It's important to put our boys on Pan-Africanism and so on and so forth. But if the sisters aren't responding to what if the girls aren't picking up what the boys are putting down, you're gonna have a problem, right? And I think that there's a stereotype that white women are much easier and much more pliant than black women can be. That is not a stereotype I adhere to, but that is part of the stereotype. And young people, especially young boys, they're going to take the path of least resistance. Most black people are not Pan-African. Most black people are not revolutionary. And if a young man wants to get his dick wet, he's going to take the path of least resistance. That white girl doing monkey double backflips. The black girl, you know what I'm saying? The black girl ain't going to be so willingly capable. And again, I'm dealing with stereotypes and so on and so forth. I don't hold this view, but I think that if we're going to speak to what our young men are selecting, we have to also raise up our daughters to also see the value in being and coupling with black men, because I don't believe that we're hearing that at all. In fact, we're hearing the opposite, right? That's just my thoughts on that.
It's not a total stereotype. Now, like, I haven't gone away to college, like gone away on campus university. My sister has, and I've been to campuses to visit, to chill. I know other black men been on campus to visit and chill. And a campus I went to, it was Fairfield University in Connecticut, right? Not too far from Boston. These white girls they because I guess they daddy ain't around, they let all they hoe out. They try to fuck on the first night. I remember when I went to that college the first time, literally, they had within an hour, I had like 3-4 white girls trying to talk to me. 3-4 white girls just trying to talk to me, to the point where I was bringing, I was bringing my friends like, yo, y'all want to get some white bitches? Just come here. They like, word. Friends started coming here. I had some friends that was going there that I even didn't know they were even going there. You know what I'm saying? Because they were just open like that. But I'm saying to say, my sister's played college basketball there, and she's seen how these male athletes are. So when we look at, you know, the draft of these football players, and Becky's like right there on his arm, and you're like, oh, why can't he get a black woman? He a sellout. He's a this. He's a that. He a coon. My sisters are like, no, see, y'all don't understand. Y'all don't understand. Based on what Black Steel says, the path of least resistance. You have these. He said, my sister's like, I've seen these dudes, these black dudes. They try to check with the black girls, but these white girls, they would like Black Steel said, they do double monkey flips, whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do, how many times I'll do it. They're there when they're on the come up because they see something like, yo, this nigga over here is on the come up. Oh. She talking about she don't suck dick. Okay, I get balls and all that, and then some. I'll have my homegirl come join too, whatever it takes. And then we wonder like, oh, how did that happen? My sister said they do all types of nasty stuff you would not believe, and as a young man, if you have you got a freak and she's gonna hold you down, why not? You know what I'm saying? So to Juana's point, Black Steel's point, that's another dynamic we have to that we have to deal with. That is a reality.
Sure, no, that's a reality. But I also, in fact, if I could remember, I'm going to try and clip this. What Black Steel said. I don't want to miss the other part of what Black Steel just said too. Are we raising our daughters with the same mentality? See, Black Steel mentioned when not all black people are Pan-Africans. That's true. We should be, but we aren't. But you know what we should be? At the very least, we should be race first. We should be black first at the very least. Yeah, Piper, thanks for your attention. I appreciate it. But I'm going to go over here by my folks and them. You know what I mean? And I think we shouldn't forget that part of what Black Steel also said. We got to rate, and this goes to a long-running conversation, one that's come up in the last 2 or 3 weeks about black women, that we got to have those real conversations about. Trigger Happy in the chat mentioned something very interesting. He says, many black men point out there is no equivalent for Dr. Umar for the women. You know, I hadn't even really thought about that. He says that there's a leniency in a sense. So everything had to be well-rounded and holistic. And that leniency is a part of the problem. We are very lenient when it comes to one gender, not the other. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing about it, but it's true. We are very lenient with one gender as opposed to the other. And the truth is, we need to raise both our black boys and black girls to have at least a race-first consciousness. Does anyone want to add any last to this?
Yes, sir. There is an equivalency. I don't know how old Trigger Happy is, but there was a sister out here. Her name was Shahrazad Ali. She wrote many books in terms of relationships, many books. Check out. Her name is Shahrazad Ali. She was on the Chitlin circuit. She was on CNN. This is back in the 90s. I don't know how old Trigger Happy is. But
Shahrazad Ali got to be in her 80s, man. Like, we need somebody coming out right now.
No, but the books are still there. The books are still there. The books are still very relevant. And what I'm saying is, and like if you're saying that Black Steel, I understand that. Currently, currently you have Sade, who is very good with someone mic is open. You have Sade, who is very good in terms of talking about relationships. But my issue, trigger happy. The only thing I would say is the we talked about this before. Doctor Dr. Johnson is extremely problematic because Dr. Johnson is not the barometer of black relationships. He doesn't have he doesn't have a partner or a black wife that he could refer to, that he could say, I had a successful relationship with a black woman for more than 10 years. And all the women, most of the women who are coming out right now, they have horrible things to say about this gentleman who talking about only the snow bunny hopping, black women. Listen, brother, even down to his daughter. You got to be very careful with the people you throw out there in terms of relationship or relational advice, because the young people see this and they're going to take you for a clown because they see his deeds, not his words, his deeds, what he is doing with the women who he is currently involved with. And they say, well, if it didn't work for him, it cannot work for me. He is not the barometer to look at, brother. I'm telling you. And I ain't trying to talk bad about no other black man. I'm just saying that we got to be careful. I would say that. I'll leave it there.
You see the problem there? We're hard on Umar, but we're ignoring the fundamental point. Where is the more pristine version of Umar and a black woman who's out here speaking about, race first matters? That's really the point.
Cool. Louis Farrakhan, whether you want to admit it or not, whether the brothers don't like him or not, has been in a relationship for more than 50, 60 years with one black woman. He has raised many generations of children. He into his grandchildren now. Consistently, you don't hear no conversations about him jumping in bed with this woman, that woman. You don't hear women coming out talking about him in disrepute. He has been having a consistent relationship with one partner for decades now. So I'm saying, if you want to look at something, go look at that. Or look at your own parents. If they had, my father was married to one woman until he died 50 years. 50 years. I'm saying that. Anyways, I'll leave it. I'll leave it alone. I can leave that alone.
Because Bonnie, you're still ducking the point. Where is, like Trina said at the same time I said it. Bonnie, you're skipping the point. Where is the female equivalent in our modern times?
And even Shay Sade, she's problematic her damn self because she's a Bible thumper.
She's a Bible thumper.
It's hard to get through to her. She flip-flopped too much for my personal taste.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point because, again, there's a leniency, right? We beat up on black men. We exalt black women, but where's the substance? That's what I want to get at. Where is that substance? We got to give the substance to our children, boys and the girls. We have to give that substance because we're talking about black boys bringing home white women. What about the black women who bringing home white men?
Call Brother Bakari. Brother Bakari, you think black women is going? Please come up. Please come up and argue with these gentlemen.
Let me say this real quick. Let me say this. So much of our interpersonal relationship is seen through the eyes of the market, right? Everything is about value, sexual marketplace value. What do you bring to the table, right? Everything, the women have a term for it. They call it financial dating, right? They want to date the dude who gives them the most bang for their buck. And when you look at it like that, who got the most money in the society? The white man does. White men tend to have more money. But even if he doesn't have money, his whiteness in itself has value. And that could go for the men or the women also. But because, again, the way we view human relations, everything is for sale. Everything is a commodity, right? Everything. And when you put a price on something, you automatically devalue it, right? This is me getting to my communist bag. So when you have these people who are telling black women, to live the soft life, then they're automatically going to gravitate towards white men because white men have more money than black men in general. So that's why you don't see a female version of Umar saying, you know, black men only, black men forever, white men never. You never hear that. You never hear that expressed, because the idea is that the white man can give you a better life because he has money, as if money is the only thing required to give a better life.
But black
Amen.
steel. No. I ain't resting on that one. We talking about word, and we talking about deed. And Black Steel knows very well that 90% of black women in terms of partnership choose someone who looks like them. In fact, they outnumber the black men in terms of dating and partnership and even marriage. So you can't rest on, even though you may not have an equivalent like Dr. Umar Johnson in word, indeed, the women are doing it anyways. They are they are practicing what we talking about more so than we are statistically.
But Born, I would argue with you. That's not by choice, though.
Black Steel taking all my points before I get.
Go ahead. That's your thunder. All right, I'm gonna go ahead. That's not by choice. Black, for the most part, and I hate to say this, right, that white men do not view black women as desirable the way white women view black men as desirable, right? It's not that black women are particularly staying loyal. It's that there's no safe landing place. Black men are the ship, and everything else is the sea. And you get away from black men, you might drown. Every day you hear about, so they just found a black woman who was dead in some cracker's attic because she went on some fancy dating site, right? But overall, black women are practicing it because there's not really an option for them to be long-term relationship. Will a white man smash? Absolutely he will. But will he marry you? Will he raise them kids? Will he bring you around his family? Will he give up his inheritance from Meemaw to be with a black woman? Not always. Not seeing it. Not seeing it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I'm saying that more than likely the black woman doesn't have the option to date outside of her race as easily as black men do. And that's why you have black women who are literally writing books on teaching black women how to become more desirable to white men. Go on Amazon. There's a book called The White Man's Whore. Like,
Black Steel, Black Steel. Meghan Markle, who's a black woman, got the Prince of England to give up his crown for a black woman.
Meghan Markle is not black. I'm sorry. That lady has never claimed to be black in her life. That lady's never claimed blackness. She always says she is biracial. She's never been in a relationship with a black man a day in her life. If you didn't look at her mother, you would not know she was a black woman.
Thank you. I hate when black people do that. She's not black. We're using this plantation type of ideology of blackness. Other people in the world don't do that. If you're a half Chinese person and a half white person, you go over to the Chinese side, they're like, "Oh, you're fully Chinese." They don't do that. And they don't do that on the European side. Oh, you're 100% Scottish. No, they say you're mixed. Only black people and brown people or colonized people do that shit. If she's not, when it comes to mixed people, if they ain't claiming it, they ain't it.
Not
Kofi. She's never claimed us. She's never claimed us.
Wait a minute. Let's go slow with this. If she hasn't claimed that, but the British society, and in fact the Crown, she said that her child, she was getting told her child was a monkey. She may not claim she's black, but certainly the English public believes that she's black, and certainly the Crown. This is the reason why the white man was willing to give up his crown for the holy black woman, Meghan Markle. Y'all see that?
Are you fucking with me? Listen, you cannot sit up here and hide under the shelter of blackness after you've rejected blackness for your entire life. Now, her whole life she was biracial. Now they start calling little Archie a monkey and all the other names. Archie got red hair and blue eyes. Okay, you would never know Archie's grandmother is a black woman ever. Look at Diana Ross. Look at Eartha Kitt. Look at these black women that marry white dudes. Look at their grandchildren. They basically bled the blackness out of them. So no, Meghan Markle ain't black. She don't get to hide under black people just because the English people are mean to her. Like John Henry Clark said, if you go over there, you stay over there. That's it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Another thing we have to be
Jack
careful in our society, where I think we have to redefine what blackness is, since us being in slavery and we taking on ideologies of what a white person is or what it means to be black. I think that's why we're confused, because they're definitely not confused. Because if you're half, think of it. If the one drop rule works, where no matter what type of amount of black you have, you're still black. You know who that's protecting? That's protecting white people. That's protecting their numbers. They don't want any interlopers. They don't want anybody with split loyalties or anything to be a part of their group. And that makes sense. Now, on the other side, what does that do to black people? That means anybody can be black. Anybody can be black. And now, I can't say anything offensive about that person because my wife is Irish. Oh, I can't say anything about her because my wife is Chinese, but they still black. You see how that doesn't work? That works against us instead of for us.
Kofi, first of all, Jacaderi, you don't have the luxury of sitting in the audience. You must come up. You are a panelist. You must come up. Follow protocol. The only person who have that privilege is Trigger Happy. Needless to say, let me say this. Kofi, you can't have it both ways, because you call Kamala Harris a black woman, and Kamala Harris has two. She has one.
She claims to be black.
No, let me finish. She has one black parent and one Asian parent. Now with Meghan Markle, you say she ain't black. You can't have it both ways, brother. Stop that. You can't have it both ways.
Hold on. But go ahead, Kofi. Go ahead.
Father is the Jamaican.
Not just that.
Black and a brown person, and Kamala Harris says she's black. Now Kamala Harris saying, well, she's gonna just be an Indian woman, like Trump said. All of a sudden she became black. She's black. Then you will have a point. But what Black still says, Meghan Markle never claimed to be black. Diana Ellis Ross' daughter, that's a black woman because she claims her blackness. Mariah Carey, right? White passing. She claims her blackness. Meghan Markle never claimed her blackness. So,
but if you say you biracial, but if you biracial, you are claiming your blackness. You just saying I am half black and half white. You are claiming your blackness if you say you biracial. Stop that.
But in the words of Big Daddy Kane, ain't no half stepping, bro. There's no half stepping. Right?
No, it is a half step. It is half. No, it is half black. No, Kofi trying to have it both ways, and he can't have it both ways. She says she's biracial, and biracial means I am half white and half black. She just doesn't say that she isn't white. So you can't have it both ways, Kofi.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you when it comes to that, but we're talking about representation. Like when it comes to, if you're two things, you can walk that straight line, but in my opinion, I don't trust you, right? But if you're gonna say, hey, there are people and I gave those examples, Diana Ellis Ross and Mariah Carey, Kamala Harris, they claim to be black, but at the same time, they honor their other side, but they claim themselves to be black women. Meghan Markle has not done that. Let's do apples to apples, orange to oranges. Now, if you show me somewhere Meghan Markle say, hey, yes, I'm a black woman, blah, 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 yada, 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 then yeah, you will have a point. But the point, and Black Steel Now is making that she never claimed her blackness. That's all that I'm saying. What you're saying is right, but it's not speaking to what we're trying to say.
Meghan Markle was on that show Suits, and she was on Deal or No Deal. Meghan Markle never claimed to be black. And by the way, we kind of getting away from the point here, but Meghan Markle never claimed to be black. And as a matter of fact, Meghan Markle is so white passing. You have to squint to see there's something in there, but I don't know what it is. It could be some kind of Latina. I don't know, but you have to squint to see. If you don't see her mother, you wouldn't know that she's any kind of black, half,
She
quarter, or whatever.
but
But
Coco, she didn't disinvite her mother from her wedding. So if you have to squint, all you gotta do is look at the audience and see her big nose black mother in that audience to know I have a
if
black mother.
And her mama was
present,
the only black person there too.
the only person, if her
That's a
mama was,
reach, Guana. That's a reach.
yeah. So again, let's get back to, because I'm about to introduce Jacadero here, but let's get it back to what we're talking about. I think the real thing that we're talking about in this prompt is get active, man. Black man, black woman, get active with these children and get a race consciousness in them and let them understand. Don't really mix with these people. You have to be around them because of the situation, especially in America. If you're going to work in a job, this, that, and the other, you're going to be around these folks. We don't really have the institutions that only hire black folks, this, that, and the other. So you're going to have to kind of get along, go along to get along and in these jobs and this, that, and the other. But in your personal lives, you get these fucking people up from around you. With that said, let's welcome Jacadero in this week. Jacadero, how are you this week?
Hey, what's going on? What's going on, man? I'm well. I'm well. Juana, I appreciate that I can't be part of the audience, huh? So I can't just be traveling, huh? I have to hurry up and get out my headphones and be able to make this. But I got you, Juana.
So, Jack, what do you say to
I'll
this?
join you later. I'll join you later, Jacadero.
Jack, what do you say about this image here? Let me find the prompt again. I got to scroll up. Should be topic number 2 says, how would y'all feel if your sons brought home Becky? Would we feel the same way like their fathers if they were racist? What say you, Jacadero?
Yeah, it's a sad sight. Usually these things are you would have to what's the word that I'm trying to use? I feel that this problem existed in the beginning, and what do I mean by that? They probably go to a school that's dominated by white people. Same with like you live in a Latino neighborhood. I believe that I've heard that Dearborn, Michigan, right outside of Detroit, is pretty much like an Arab city. And so, you as a parent, if you have the financial ability, you got to do your best to, put your sons and daughters in environments where this they would have to go out of their way for this. I hope I'm making sense. So, sure, we can blame these two individuals. That's fine. I don't mind the accountability. But then also it's like, if you're a father of these two young men, for these two young men, like what did you do? If you were going to get angry, what did you do in advance? Did you try your hardest to, put your sons and your daughters where they're not even thinking about it, their closest option or their you know, it's oftentimes to say like the term slim pickums, did they have that? Hey, did the black girls that were around them, were they far and few in between? And then also like, what are you doing at home? I reflect this a lot to the parents. Another thing is that it looks like these guys are around 16, 15. They could be 17, 18, but maybe 15, 16. I'd continue to talk to my son even after I would see something like this. Would it anger me? Yeah. But then again, I would ask myself, like, what did I do to prepare for a situation like this? Um, and then, you have continuous education. And one of the things that this brother, the taller brother, he looks South Sudanese. So I'm laughing just because,
I thought so too.
yeah, right? Like he
Yeah,
looks,
he does.
he,
Yeah, I don't
he
like to say there's
looks,
an African phenotype, but he looks like he's from Sudan.
yeah, South Sudan. And so I'm in a group chat with some South Sudanese majority South Sudanese brothers. It's a fantasy football group chat, and I don't know how we got in the conversation. I can't remember, but as we know, the NBA season's coming up, and South Sudanese are really, really proud of their basketball team. During the exhibition games of the Olympics, South Sudan nearly beat Team USA. And one of those players that hit the 3 point to, I think it was either to tie it or have South Sudan's go up by 1 against the US on LeBron James. His name is JT Thor. And I think he just got on the roster for, don't quote me on the NBA team, but now he's back in the NBA after playing, I think, for either the G League or maybe overseas. But I bring that up is because JT Thor is a solid 6'10", and they say he has like a 7'1" wingspan. You guys can look him up. And there's another model. There's another South Sudanese model. Her name is Anok Yai. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. And they, like, I think it's like for the past 3 years, she's always been the most sought after um TikTok account. Like every year for the past 3 years, her TikTok account gets the most engagement. After towards like the end of December, they always come up with like who's generated the most engagement. And a Nokia, out of all the accounts that you guys can think of, her account always comes up. And Anok doesn't seem like she's short. She seems also like a taller South Sudanese person. And I said in the chat, I go, how amazing would it be if Anok and JT Thor were to get together and have a child? We talk about Giannis in the basketball world like he is God's gift to earth, like that's a Nigerian freak, right? Like this is exactly what type of like when you create a player on 2K, Giannis is the type of player that everybody that is into basketball, into video games, you want to create. Now imagine an Nokia and a JT Thor, and you make now a darker, right? More nimble. Imagine more nimble. And already Giannis is already nimble as it is. He's already a freak of athletic nature. And now you have just a darker and a slimmer and just somebody that can just jump a little bit higher than Giannis. And then some of the guys in the group chat, I guess they know JT Thor, and they were like, "Oh, he's into snow bunnies." And I was like, "No, no way, no, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't come on." And why it doesn't make any sense is I don't know why, but I think it was sometime last year. I'm kind of putting myself out there, but I'm under 6 foot, uh, and I just looked up like what is the percentage of men above 6'2" in the world. And studies are pretty tough just because it varies with each study, but the general consensus is that it's less than 4% of the world's men are under 6'2", or excuse me, less than 4% of the world's men are above 6'2" and above. And so, just JT Thor being 6'10", and then you're probably messing with snow bunnies, and most snow bunnies, it's rare that you see, white women that are even above 5'10", right? And I was just like, you have a height. If you have a child, you're just watering down the perfect product, my guy. And so these are the type of things that you would try to instill in your boys. Like if you got an individual like we see on screen that is either Senegalese or South Sudanese descent, it's just telling him like, do you love the way that you look? So if you love the way that you look, imagine your son or your daughter being the exact replica of you and or being better. And then you just go from there. But again, I think these things are a lot of the work has to come from the parents. As a father, if you're going to be upset at this, again, what type of school district did you put your child in? What type of education? And then again, instilling that like, hey, do you love the way that you look? Why wouldn't you want your children potentially to look as good, if not better than you?
Jackada, I appreciate you tuning in, even though you were traveling. You were still in the chat listening. I do appreciate that, man. I do. Trigger Happy says we need an arranged marriage topic because that's what we should be engaged in, or at least more organized forms of courtship. And I agree. We need more organized forms of courtship. Musings and Bloom. I haven't seen you in a minute. He or she says, I think part of the problem is calling these melanin deficient people snow bunnies. I agree with you too. That denotes cuteness or innocence, etc. It's a great marketing campaign for these white people. And that's one of the things I never liked about Umar talking about snow bunny, because the way he says it in a way that kind of feels a little wrong. But anyway, Trigger Happy says also, Jacadero, we don't need to stop at physical attributes. If you are an intelligent black man or black man with leadership qualities, you're not passing down those qualities to black children. Last question. This is a question for everyone. I haven't seen it. I got to look it up. Provide Triggers for Evolution asks the question, has anyone seen one battle after another? Has anyone here seen that?
No, I haven't heard of that.
I don't know what that is.
I started to watch it, and let me tell you, what's the singer name from New York City? Her name is, what's the singer name? Kofi, Tisha, whatever her name is.
Mm-hmm.
In 5 minutes of that movie, she was licking Sean Penn's asshole. Well, the insinuation was in terms of the
excuse me, what the fuck?
This is a fact.
Now I don't want to see it. Now I don't want to see it.
What were you watching?
I tell you. I watched the first 10 minutes of that movie, and these are supposed to be black revolutionary women. And in the first 10 minutes of that movie, she went, really and truly, she went into a room with Sean Penn, who was the adversary in the movie, and she had a sexual act with him. Now, she is a black revolutionary, and in the sexual act, one of the things she did is she pinned him against the wall, and he was naked, and she was standing at the back of him, and she gone down, and the insinuation of that movie was she was licking his ass, eating his groceries, as the young people say. So I'm saying, as a revolutionary, I'm thinking of Assata Shakur. So would Assata Shakur commit that kind of act? Now the liberals saying, well, it's a rebel. It was so twisted. I cut that movie. When I saw that bullshit, I cut that movie completely. I'm like, this supposed to be a black revolutionary woman? Come on, man. Come on. Hollywood is a crazy place. Hollywood is a crazy place. And I cut that movie off. That's the only part of that movie I see, and I was done with it.
It's a psyop. It's like this. There's this popular book called Dear Black People, and it was it came on HBO, and it was like a movie or something. So I started looking at it. I was like, oh, this is good. And she's talking all that revolutionary stuff. It sounded like a Fannie Lou Hamer, sounded like a Shirley Chisholm and a Shada Shakur. And she's a young person that's on campus. She goes back to the dorm. She's having sex with a white boy. I'm like, what the fuck is this? It's all psyops. Like, there's certain movies I do not watch. And when I was a lot younger, I'm not patting myself on the shoulder or anything like that, because I grew up in your typical West Indian household that is not like pro-black, but I always felt that there's something wrong with these things. Up to this day and age, I am proud to say, and this bothered me when it came out, because I love Whitney Houston. I have never, ever seen, in my Chris Tucker voice, seen The Bodyguard. Why am I interested in at that time in the 90s, Whitney Houston, a diva, goddess, voice of an angel? Her bodyguard is a white guy, and a white guy saving a black woman. That never settled with me. And when I hear people such a wonderful movie, and you know, and the famous song, yeah, it's a beautiful song, but I would not look at the video, because the video shows you clips from the movie and they're being intimate. I'm like, what the fuck is this? What is this? Like, you couldn't find a black man to play that. Wesley Snipes was popping back then. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people who you could have got, but they purposely, when I heard how The Bodyguard is being made or whatever, they purposely, no, because we wanted to be a white person there, because race relations, this, that. Like, who gives a fuck about that? Race relations and racism is a problem that white people have. Why do we have to be a part of your goddamn solution? You the ones who are the sick ones, not us. What's this fucking slave play that's going on? So I'm definitely not gonna watch that movie. I just wanted to say that.
There's a podcast called "White People Won't Save You" on a Spotify. I think it's very good. It talks about the white savior movies, and to that movie, you can also add A Bronx Tale, because there's nowhere in the world this white boy called his little girl's brother a nigger, and she still stayed with him. I hate that movie with
I
all my.
remember that.
Oh,
Black
wow.
Steel.
all
I
my.
remember that, and I was so confused. Like, wait, what the hell's going on?
I'll look at Jungle Fever though. After that white girl over the time for a nigga. I look at Jungle Fever over and over again. I look at that. That's funny.
Shout out to Jose, who's out there in the chat. Musings and Bloom says these films are a form of psychological grape. White people desperately want to grape masses of black people. Motherfuckers are sick. Provide Triggers for Evolution said it seems to me that mixed marriages to white males are celebrated on the continent, particularly by the middle or upper middle class. Just my perception. She had asked the question of the panel earlier if we think if there's more of a proclivity on the continent to have mixed marriages and stuff like that. I don't know personally, but I know Provide Triggers travels to the continent frequently, and that's what she has seen or perceived to have seen. Do you guys have an understanding of the interracial relationship dynamics on the continent?
I don't, but I've seen the videos where the black women are telling, to be careful about having these kids, because they get the same. White men get the best PR in the world, man. White men are seen as desirable, and you don't see. And for those black women over there, they don't see white men every day. So when they get a white man, they see a surprise, or Asian man, it's a surprise to them. So I feel sorry for them, but I'm not aware of the dynamics. I'm pretty sure it's probably worse than what it is here.
I might change the conversation to something else. And I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that. Now, the dynamic. So let's say, for argument, besides the Sudanese guy, let's say he's just a darkly heavy melanated African American or Caribbean. Let's just say that, right? The dynamic between people growing up in the States and in the Caribbean marrying these white girls versus African man or African woman marrying a continental African man. If these two people that we see, these two couples were to get married, they're gonna have a nice European wedding, and it's gonna be your typical European wedding, serving hors d'oeuvres and with potato salad with raisins in it. If they were now, if the continental Africans, the African man and the African woman that's marrying their white counterparts, they are having an African wedding. They're having a traditional African wedding. That African man and African woman that's marrying that European, they are not giving up their culture. That is a fact. That is more. I rather that than this that we see, because at least, even though it's cringe, it's like, you got white people wearing kente cloth and additional African attire. It's a turn on, but to me, it's at least they're holding on to their culture instead of sacrificing their culture. So to me that's a little bit of a net positive versus what we'll see here. And most interracial couples that I've seen, is nothing but niggas trying to run away from who they are. So if their wife is Irish, niggas is wearing green for St. Patrick's Day. If she's Italian, niggas want to learn Italian and brag about how they went to Venice. You see what I'm saying? So the dynamic is different.
Trigger, I'm going to ask you a favor again to post a topic for the next week or so. This thing that you and Jose just said in the chat is very interesting. The continent bleaches their skin, whereas the diaspora bleaches reproductively. I find that a fascinating statement. I'd like you to put up a prompt on that. Let's discuss that a little bit more, during a different week. But
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's an interesting. That's a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
The continent bleaches their skin more, but the diaspora bleaches reproductively. That's very interesting.
More access to white people, but I'll
Yeah,
focus on that more.
yeah. Any last quick thoughts on this prompt? If not, let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 3, I guess. Shoot the Breeze topic number 3. And by the way, that was a very good conversation. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate that prompt, and I appreciate you guys for the conversation. That was very good. Shoot the Breeze topic number 3 says, with Burkina Faso's new family code, if they can ban this, why can't interracial relations also be banned? So there's a little bit of a continuation of that topic. This takes us to Twitter again. Hold on, let me reshare that again because I lost connection. It says, hold on. Where is it? Right there. Okay, so this is from Lumumba's briefcase, aka Brother Legend. It says, please also ban interracial marriage or limit the access of non-African spouses to community resources. Otherwise, your country will look like Michael Jackson's kids in 2 generations. So the original tweet is from Bricks News. It says, just in, Burkina Faso officially adopts law banning homosexuality with up to 5 years in prison. Let me see if there's more. Someone says here, LOL, that's too funny. They can't ban interracial marriages. However, what they may ban is any leader in the future who is married to a white chick should be disqualified to run for president. And Lumumba, aka Brother Legend, responds, they can ban it. America banned it for centuries. And there are countries like Japan and France that had rules banning it. It can be done. Quote, if we don't handle our independence very well, colonizers will come back in the form of investors. As Simon Mwanzi Kapwepwi, I think that's how you pronounce it. Sorry if I butchered it. But again, Burkina Faso officially adopts law banning homosexuality with up to 5 years in prison. And the prompt says, with Burkina Faso's new family code, this is what this is about. If they can ban this, why can't interracial relationships be banned as well? Let me start with Kofi on this one. Kofi, what are your thoughts?
Oh man.
That's why I went to you first, but go ahead.
Well, I had to get my thoughts together a little bit because I like to be the devil's advocate at the end of after everyone gets their thoughts. I have no real objection to this, but it is kind of like drawing the line on. Look, before I even move forward. Africa and African countries have every right to do whatever they want to do. They don't need the UN's permission. They don't need white people's permission to do what they want to do. When the United States want to do something, they put the middle finger up to everyone and say, suck it. We're the United States. Same thing. We're Burkina Faso. Suck it. We do what we want to do. We're our own people. I'm governor. You run your country. I run my country. They have every right to do what they want to do. The thing is really not pushback, but it kind of borderlines where the UN people could say, well, you're trying to be an ethno state. There's going to be no democracy, and you guys are engaging in reverse racism or whatever. You guys aren't with the times, this, that, and the other. But I have no real problem with it at all whatsoever. I just know that there's going to be a fallout when it comes to these things. They're going to try to drum up some type of human rights abuse or some type of civil rights violation globally that they're having, that it's it could turn bad because again, Burkina Faso, they're self-sufficient, they're into trade. So from a PR standpoint, they can say, why are you going to trade with a racist country, with a bigoted country? You see what I'm saying? That could be the fallout in this particular campaign. What I would say, what they say about Teddy Roosevelt, I walk quietly, but I walk with a big stick. I don't think there's something that that they need to publicize. Well, we're not going to have no white people that. Yeah, no problem with that. I wouldn't publicize that. Everybody knows the United States is racist. Everyone knows the United States but they don't go around publicizing that. It's in practice. And you can always, someone says, well, you guys are racist. You can always deny it. Hey, look, on the books, it says here that, you got the 14th Amendment, the 13th Amendment. Look at the Civil Rights Act. How are we racist? But they're racist in their practice, not in their laws. So I think that's what they need to do. But as far as Burkina Faso, and I'll say this about other African countries, as far as homosexuality is concerned, with banning homosexuality and or even having jail sentences, or even go as far extreme as executions, that is barbaric. And I think that has to do with African traditions. Now, there's been gay people has always been existed. So this is not the first time Africa's been dealing with gay people. Gay people is like, in African societies, is like that cousin that you just don't talk about, or why this person is like in their 30s and very good looking person, but don't have a wife yet, don't have a husband yet. Everybody just knows, she's with that friend for like 5 years for a while, but no one says anything, right? But the problem with it goes too far with Africans, where people gonna say, well, it's backwards and barbaric, where you're executing people and you're imprisoning people for a sexual lifestyle. You don't have to, to me, that's very backwards, and that is very, very old fashioned. And to me, that's is something to me that needs to be eradicated. Hey, look, I don't believe in demonizing people when it comes to that, because if you really think about it, as heterosexual men on this panel, we can't fathom the fact of being with another man versus being with a beautiful black woman. It's total insanity for us to think that. I can't think that. It's kind of nauseating. But with that being said, that's how you know these people aren't pretending. They're not doing this to get attention, because their lives could be in danger. So this tells you something about a people that I don't think they want to understand, that they rather just demonize and kill. So when it comes to those two things, that's my POV on those two situations. So I know I probably might get pushed back for it, but that's okay. But I yield the mic.
No, pushback is fine. I put up a post on the community tab a couple of days back that disagreement, difference of opinion doesn't mean it's an argument or some big thing. But I do think the 5-year thing is more of a deterrent. But I like what Musings and Bloom in the chat is kind of saying. If you make people go what they call DL, make people go DL, you stand to put women and children's health at risk. And I do kind of understand that. But I'd like the panel to later on address what should the alternative necessarily be.
Can I piggyback on that real quick, and just get people to understand my real quick POV when it comes to homosexual people? I'll tell her, so you could check this on my channel. One of the first videos I did. I have 8 aunts and uncles, right? We all have our favorites and stuff like that, but I love them all. But my favorite aunt, right, died from HIV because of a guy that was on the DL. And she saved me from a lot. And I hated gay people for a while. Now, this has happened in the early 90s. So the story is she never slept around because back in the 80s, only people that had AIDS were drug addicts and gay people, especially if you're a man. So all I remember before I knew my aunt had AIDS, she just got married. She graduated. She was a social worker. Graduated, found a husband, got married, had a baby, and everything you're supposed to do. Everything is wonderful. And then one day, uh, my little baby niece got sick, and my baby niece, my niece, my cousin, my baby cousin, she just died. And then I assumed because she died and her husband couldn't take the pain, they got a divorce. Come to find out was they even lied to my grandmother. My aunt found out she had AIDS when she was pregnant or when she had my cousin. And she's like, what? And it's like, yes, my baby cousin died when she was 2 due to complications of HIV. My aunt gave it to her husband. He eventually died. That's why they split up. All because she sat me down and she says, this, protect yourself. This. It was a guy that I was with. It was like the first guy I was with. I think it was the first guy or the second guy she's ever with. She's in college. And I tracked him because he said, I have not been with a lot of people. I've been probably like 3 people and found out that, yes, he had AIDS and I got it from him. Why? Because he's on the DL. He has to hide. He has to pretend to be something that he's not. So let me try women out. You know what I'm saying? And it devastated my whole family to the point I hated gay people. I hated gay people with a fucking passion. But I had to learn and understand why what happened. And that means me listening to both sides, to people of why they do the things that they do. If you want to know more about that, just go on my channel. It's one of the first videos that I ever made. So if we want to tackle a problem, we have to be honest and put aside our own biases. That's it.
Appreciate that, Kofi. I remember you talking about this before on your channel. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to Kofi's channel, Kofi the Black Critic on YouTube, you can find them in my subs area if you can remember. Part of KWAZ Radio. Check out Kofi and the lives that he does. Cheryl says, so sorry for your loss to Kofi. Much appreciated, Cheryl. Thanks for coming through. Greetings to you too. Haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. I hope recent discourse on the panel didn't make you kind of shy away from the show, but I do appreciate you being here today. With that said, let me hear from Buana next. Buana, what's it?
Yes, sir. So let me start here because Kofi made several points that I want to address. So America talks about you don't want to be perceived as an ethno state, even though if everyone remember, I don't know if you all guys remember or old enough to remember, America did business with South Africa. Ronald Reagan did business at the time when South Africa was behaving like an ethno state. They had no problem with it. So now the pot calling the kettle black and say, "Oh, we don't want to do business with people who are operating as an ethno state because we have to." That's not been the history of the United States and how they have no problem doing business with countries who have an ethno state kind of tinge or bend. They have no problem because Ronald Reagan was doing business with South Africa when the world was looking at it kind of funny style. Had no problem. Now they turn in their head and say, well, you don't want to behave. No. We ain't gonna do that. We're not doing that. In terms of banning homosexuality, yeah, it's not the culture. It's not the culture of Burkina Faso to engage in that practice. Now, the Western practice may be different, but they have a right to behave. No one could tell the Americans you shouldn't do that. oh, we don't like y'all doing it. And Americans will stick up their middle finger and say, F you. You know, we have our own country, we have our own rights, and we should behave as we wish. So why is it not good for the goose, good for the gander? The Burkina Faso can say, well, this is not a part of our culture. We ban these ideas. These radical homosexuals, just like how they said radical left, the radical homosexuals are trying to create a culture that's not consistent with the culture of Burkina Faso. And as a government, we should decide the direction of where we want our people to go. There should be no issues with that. No issues with that. But as far as banning relationships, I would say this. Um, Now, Burkina Faso has done Burkina Faso. I think Traore says he's a Pan African. I'm not sure. I think he says he is. But even if he is not, the Russians do business with Burkina Faso. The North Koreans do business with Burkina Faso. I don't know. I say that small steps first. Let's take care of the business at hand first before we put an American jacket on the issues involving the country of Burkina Faso. Because we could talk all we want to talk, but we are trying to solve issues specifically to Burkina Faso, not to the United States of America. So you have to be very careful with that. Because Ibrahim Traore may perceive people as people unless they prove themselves otherwise. And if the Russians are helping Burkina Faso in a way that no other Western society has, why would he say, well, Russian women shouldn't marry black women in this country? Now that's a whole other kind of discussion. But the reality is, most people from Burkina Faso can marry and have relationships from that country. That's not an issue that you should have to encounter right now at this time. At this time. So small steps first. Let's deal with the issues that is on us first. If he say no Western wigs, no more blonde wigs, because there was an African country, at the Senegalese president banned Western wigs, and the black women from that country had a big issue with it. In fact, he had to reverse that decision because of the hue and cry from the black women of that country. So you have to decolonize the mind of people first. And you could say, well, marrying white women is that's small steps. Let's deal with the small issues first. Get rid of the wigs, get rid of the other things, and let the people see how it advances society first. And then we deal with other kinds of issues that's not necessarily in the face of Burkina Faso people. Because 99.9% of people who live in that society look just like me and you. So that's, like I say, don't put an American suit on a Burkina issue problem. Okay. As far as the homosexuality, you have to be careful with me because I see public executions, Saudi Arabia, let's lop off their heads, but that's too far for some people. Everyone should. I understand I live in the West, so everyone should have a right to live. Everyone should have a right to exist. But we want to protect our society. We don't want it to fall into degeneracy and perversions. And if we perceive this thing as degenerate or perversity of our culture and society, we have a right to protect our culture, whether you don't agree with it or not, whether you consider it as backwards or not. So if you're going to engage in these practices, well, we will show you to the airport, we will show you to the train station, or we will show you to the graveyard. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. And that may seem harsh for some Western ears, but just because America does it doesn't make it acceptable for every other society. And the Western ears must be able to understand that because no one could tell the Americans what to do. So why do you feel like you should tell the Burkina Fasos or Burkina Babes what to do? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So if you want to engage in that practice, we invite you to leave the country because that's not the direction we decide to go in. But that's my opinions on the thing. I'll leave it there.
But so Buana, just to encapsulate the whole prompt, if they can ban homosexuality, whether it's a big or small issue, that's what they choose because it's not in line with their belief, their African beliefs and tradition. The question still remains: why can't they take the next step and get rid of the interracial relationships?
Because
What are your thoughts?
usually, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So because usually in a situation like that, you don't want to create a buffer class. The interracial relationships is usually made to create a buffer class, like the Dominican Republic. They created a buffer class of people who had the ideas of the slave masters, but they just they was black, but they had the ideas of the slave masters. That's not the issue of Burkina Faso, where I say 90% or even above 90% of the general public look just like me and you. So that's not an issue that needs to be solved at this point. At this point, and if that arises as an issue, then you say, "Well, we don't want you. We're going to ban Chinese because these are the people coming into the country. Chinese, we're going to ban the relationship with Russians, or we're going to put in our constitution, even if you marry them, they have no right to land. They have no right to certain things within the society itself in terms of gaining power." Because it's just not about a relationship, it's about using that relationship to gain power. And at this point in Burkina Faso, I think it's more than 90% of people who look just like me and you. That's really not an issue to solve right now, not at this point. But if you're living in the United States, if you're living in the Dominican Republic, if you're living in Guyana, in Guyana, where the population is skewed, where you have 50% to 40% are Indians and black people, now that becomes a problem. So you have to, resolve the problem in instituting laws that will protect your society from different things happening and creating these buffer classes. But that's what I think.
I appreciate that, Buana. Musings and Bloom says, because you can't just ban these things while the average racial self-esteem is extremely low, you have to give people something to be proud of and aspire to. So soft power is crucial. I understand that because that aligns with, I think it was Buana who mentioned Senegal banning the weaves, and the women there kind of losing their minds over. This is why it goes back to the earlier conversation that we overlook the racial consciousness of black women. I'm not trying to beat up on black women. This is not an I can fire type thing. I'm just saying that we gotta check that too, right? Because of the racial self-esteem of if the consciousness was black, was race first consciousness, the women wouldn't have carried on that way in Senegal to the point where she had to reverse that decision. That's wild stuff. That's wild stuff. We really got to work on our race first consciousness. But with that said, let me hear from Black Steel. Black Steel would say.
So this is my thoughts on this. He's not banning homosexuality. I mean, Burkina Faso banning homosexuality has nothing to do with Pan-Africanism. It has to do with Islam, right? I believe it's because it is a Muslim country. He's banning homosexuality for that reason, not because it has anything to do with Pan-Africanism. To Kofi's point, gay people have always been with us, right? But the persecution of gay people, you don't really see that outside of the Abrahamic religions. So this function of, giving people fines and gay people fines or whatnot for doing whatever they're doing, this comes out of the Abrahamic tradition. This has nothing to do with Pan-Africanism. I would like to see any instance of African people imprisoning or punishing homosexuals prior to colonization. They may have looked down upon it. They may not have been accepting of it. But I don't see any punishment, any incarceration. It was just that weird relative. And even with black people in America, we all know somebody that's gay. That's that weird relative that we got that, don't have a boyfriend, has never had a boyfriend before, but we acknowledge this person for who they are. We don't see the need to persecute them and mistreat them. So that's just my thoughts on that. But I would also say too that they're not going to ban interracial relationships because they don't see interrelationships as a threat. They see homosexuality as a threat, but they don't see marrying white people or dating with Arabs or whatnot with it. They don't see that as a threat, right? So that's why they don't ban it. You don't ban something unless you think it's threatening towards you, and that's really they feel like it's a threat and it's something that could be a potential hazard to um, to their culture, and they don't feel that way about gay about interracial relationships. They just really feel like, oh, this is abomination in the eyes of the Lord. This goes back to Abrahamic religion, not nothing to do so much with Christianity, or I mean something to do with Pan Africanism. At least in my thought, I would not say that is something that they would consider it to be. I could be wrong, but I don't. Again, I don't really see too many things about interracial. I mean, homosexuality against it with it outside of the Abrahamic religion. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
That's a sobering comment there, Black Seal, because Traore is a Pan African based on things he said about the global Black community. But you're right about that. We sometimes forget that Arab guy. I forget his name. We've showed his videos in the past. Here, that Arab guy, I forgot his name now, but he was pushing that what's happening in Burkina Faso is because the leader is Muslim, and we kind of forget. At least me, I kind of forget that Traore is Muslim, to be honest. So you could be absolutely correct. That's his Islam, his Islamic side, banning, and the country might be Islamic too. I'm not certain, but that's a very sobering point. That might not have anything to do with Pan African per se, but he might be operating under Islamic laws and tradition and stuff like that. So that's a very good point. In the chat, Musings and Bloom says in ancient Yoruba societies, homosexuals were banished from the society as they were considered a problem to the overall harmony to the society. Shout out to Real Black Gentleman who's in the chat. Shahid Bolson. Thank you, KW7. Shahid Bolson is the guy who kept ranting that Traore is operating the way he is because he's a Muslim, which is, I mean, let's just stop it. But this point here might very well be due to his being a Muslim. With that said, Jacadero, you've heard everything everyone else had to say. What say you to all of it?
Coco, you still with me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah, Jack, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Can you guys hear Jacadero?
Yeah, I can hear him loud and clear.
I can hear him just fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay. So why? The question was, they banned homosexuality, marriage. I assume marriage, right? Because, why? Yeah. What with Burkina's family code? If they can ban this, so it's a family code. I'm not 100% sure on what's being banned. You can ban homosexuality, I guess. Like, I've always thought about this, like, how can you ban what people are doing in the dark? I hate to be funny about this, but like, how can you do that? Like, it's like telling people like, oh, you can't pick your nose. Well, then people are just gonna, if they're involved into those things, they're just gonna do it, behind your back, no pun intended. But if it's homosexual marriages, okay. And then why can't interracial relations also be banned. Let's start on the first part. I think it was Black Steel that pointed out that Traore is a Muslim. Burkina Faso, uh, they they have a significant Muslim population. I think one of their current conflicts that brought Traore to be a captain in the first place was that he was doing a good job of fighting religious zealots in the north. I think in the northern part of the country, and so like they got big issues. And some would say that those religious zealots called like jihadists are the Tuareg people, and some would say, oh, some Tuareg are mixed of Berber, Amazigh, and Black Africans. So if we're gonna ask like why can't interracial relations also be banned, I think it's because they probably have in those parts where they're close to I forget what Burkina Faso borders, but if it borders those areas of like um those areas where the Berbers, the people that live in the deserts, they probably already have populations that are mixed, whether that's like direct Arab or Arab descent or like those, again, those people that look like the constituents of Algeria. Uh, and then I don't know who it was, but a panelist brought up like, I think it was Buana that brought up, it's not even a concern for them right now. They're looking at something that's saying, hey, we just want to establish something right now because it's not a problem. Because we're on the topic of homosexuality, again, I don't know if it's homosexual marriages that are being banned, but if it is, the US, the Trump administration has hinted at categorizing I think it's transsexuals as or transsexuality as an extreme, I think like an extreme ideology, just because the suspect from the Charlie Kirk shooting, he supposedly had a relationship with somebody that identified as trans, and then the Minneapolis private school shooting, that guy was apparently identified as trans as well. So why do I bring that up? Um, this is, again, this is how my brain processes things. If I'm a politician and the head of the political sphere, I'm thinking that we have to solve problems that are going on. The US is probably thinking like, hey, we are so far right that we want to get away from the left, and it looks like the left supports this call and this openness towards being trans, identifying as trans. And so maybe, just maybe, Traore's government is seeing that once you allow or even entertain the openness to allowing homosexuality, then you can also bring those things that come about. Uh, and what are some of those things? Well, then you can just say like, hey, if we allow homosexual marriages to exist here, then we can allow other things. And what are those other things? Well, then you can just say like, well, on our TVs, because representation is everything, on maybe our TV programs, we need to start adding in characters into our TV shows. There's almost like a complaint now these days where people say like, how come I can watch a random movie on Netflix and somewhere randomly in the story is somebody that is flamboyantly gay? And the storyline, it doesn't even call for this. So I think that they're trying to say that our country called Burkina Faso was originally called the land of the, or I think it's now called the land of the upright man. What's upright about being homosexual? That's how I think. Now, the second part is why not also ban interracial? I always just look at like a people, especially like the presidents. And this is not to harp on Jamaica, but I'm kind of harping on Jamaica. I've never seen a dark skinned prime minister of Jamaica ever. I know Andrew Holness is really, really light. And then before him, There was somebody really, really light. So I'm saying that I've never came across somebody from Burkina Faso that was even brown skin. So I would be surprised if they even have like what Buana called like a buffer class. I, yeah, it just wouldn't make any sense to bring that when it just doesn't even exist. Yeah, I hope I answered this, man.
Was PJ.
So I learned something. Bonnie got a lot of noise coming through there. I learned something today that Shahid Bolson, that's the guy I was trying to remember. Thanks, Kate, to be on 7 for giving me the name. But Provide Triggers for Evolution said he's a European American who converted to Islam. I don't know then. I must not be able to recognize these people. I thought he was an Arab for sure. But my bad on that. So my apologies for that. KW Don 7 in the chat says Baruti teaches that homosexuality is un-African. Before that, Provide Triggers agreed completely with Black Steel's assessment. With that said, man, is there any last thoughts? This is going to be the last prompt for the night. Is there any last thoughts from any of my panelists on anything that was discussed here tonight?
Real quick, let me say something. One thing I want to say, because the mention about the Charlie Kirk shooter, the dude who killed Charlie Kirk was a trans person. They had a trans roommate or whatever, right? We got to understand the Charlie Kirk shooting in the historical parallel of the Reichstag fire. So for those of you who don't know, but for those of you listening, and after Adolf Hitler took power in Nazi Germany, there was a fire in the German parliament building called the Reichstag. So at the time, the Nazis blamed the communists for burning down the fire, and it allowed Hitler to make all sort of illegal moves against so-called enemies of the state, namely the labor unions, the communists, so Jewish people, so on and so forth. That's what the Charlie Kirk shooting is in regards to. Him having a trans roommate is nothing. This dude was a lunatic, was a racist white supremacist. However, this shooting that happened is giving them a license to go after their enemies. And that's kind of what they're doing. So gay marriage in the United States will be banned. They've already got rid of the abortion amendment. They're going after gay marriage, and pretty soon they're going to try to repeal all those precedents that happen in the Supreme Court. So they're going to go after interracial marriage. So you may not even have to go to Burkina Faso. Eventually, they're going to overturn it here too in the U.S.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that, Black.
If
Yeah, go
y'all
ahead,
guys
Bon.
could hear me. Yeah. Jamaica had two very dark-skinned prime ministers. Trigger happy named them. PJ Patterson was a very dark-skinned prime minister, and Hugh Shearer. Hugh Shearer was a very dark-skinned prime minister. But I tell you something. Let me tell you something. Hugh Shearer, he was banning a whole lot of Marcus Garvey stuff in his time. He was, even though you're a very black man, that don't necessarily mean that you may have the ideology of a black person. So you got to be careful with that, especially in these Caribbean countries, because you have a lot of black Europeans in these Caribbean countries. So you got to be very, very careful of that. Color sometimes, because Michael Manley, for his efforts, right or wrong, he was very black centered, very black centered. So you got to be careful with that in these Caribbean. I got to tell you, Jack Cadero, you got to be very careful with that. We have a prime minister right now. He's an exceptionally black man, but I'm gonna tell you, you have to look at the thinking of people. Sometimes you got to look at the thinking of people, because that could be a big mistake when you're looking at countries and say, "Oh, this person is black, so he must think that way." That's not always the case.
in the chat, Trigger Happy says, I always say the black European is who makes the light-skinned mixed person. So there's always a connection. By the way, it was KW Don 7 who pointed out PJ Patterson was dark-skinned. Hugh Sherrill was PM in the 70s. He was brown-skinned. Real Black Gentleman throwing me a little jab. White man with a bed equals Arab. Shout out to Lawrence of Arabia. Yeah, I really thought that dude was Arab, to tell you the truth. Provide Triggers mentions Burkina Faso borders Mali, Niger, Benin, Togo, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire. But in the north, I think they bought a Chad. It's Chad or Morocco. I think they bought a. KW Don 7 mentions Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, is an open homophile. Speaking of Jamaica, I think. Musings and Bloom says most African leaders are blacker than black, yet awful leaders. Very interesting stuff. You know what, man? We only got through 3 topics tonight, but I'm okay with that because you know why? The conversation was really, really good tonight, and I appreciate that. But before you panelists leave tonight, before you guys leave in the chat, do me the one little favor. Let's do our shout outs for the week. Anything positive you saw in your neck of the woods happened to you personally, or happened in the black world that you thought was exceptional. By the way, let me shout out Anthony McPhail. I know Anthony hasn't come around in a minute, but I did catch him on Kofi's channel. I think, I caught him on Kofi's channel, I think it was, and he was saying that he was hitting the pavement, doing the work in the streets, and that is commendable. That's also one of the things I've always wanted from Shoot the Breeze too, is that we come through on a Saturday night. Let's talk about the things that we did out in the world for real. So I appreciate Anthony. I hope all is well otherwise. Jackadar, you was way off. I hope Anthony is well otherwise, and I hope that situation he mentioned, I can't remember the details now, but someone he knows had a kid or grandson who was killed, and so him and some other men were doing some work in the street. So shout out to that brother. Again, if you guys have any similar stories, not necessarily tonight, but in the future, things you're doing on the outside in the real world, by all means, come to, Shoot the Breeze, let us know. Every week, Jackadero tells us what he's doing in his organization over in Omaha. So you guys can do the absolute same. With that said, though, shout outs this week, man. In the chat, post your shout outs. I'll read them on the screen. Right now, I just have 2 panelists with me. Jackadero's in the chat. But Black Steel, what would you like to shout out this week?
Excellent show tonight. Just shouting out the panel, good discussion all around. I think we have to be careful sometimes. This show is important, even with, we may not have a lot of people on here, but I think the things we discuss are important, and we can't ever compromise the integrity of our show. So that's it. Thanks.
Sorry, couldn't find the unmute button. Yeah, you are correct about that. I'll have to just quickly. I don't mind a dissenting view sometimes, but I do recognize that some dissenting views can kind of hurt the show a little bit. This past week, in fact, it was Black Steel who commented. I tried to at the members of the Discord and try to get women to, black women to speak up on something, and no one spoke up. And, it could have been because of recent conversations in recent weeks. But I also want to say that, we can't be too sensitive and we can't be too afraid. Of course, we can't push the limits and we can't go too far. So this is my shout out. My shout out is to dissenting views that are respectful, that recognize that whatever's going on with Black people in a negative light is usually because of these other folks that are enemies, open enemies. And unfortunately, a lot of our people aren't hip to the fact of what's going on. This conversation tonight kind of highlights that. Even on the continent, we have some nonsense going on. So, shout out to quality commentary, shout out to nuanced commentary, and shout out to being able to accept the commentary sometimes if it doesn't go too far, and being able to roll with it. Again, Black women, shout out to y'all. If you're on the Discord, respond to my thing that I sent out. Oh, by the way, I also sent out a music thing. I was trying to grow a playlist. Only Black Steel and D-Web responded. Some of y'all are actually from the continent, Kenya and Ghana and all that stuff. I was hoping to see some musical selections from those parts of the world. Some of us are from the Caribbean. Let's put up our musical choices. In any event, Juana, what would you like to shout out this week?
Shout out to Anthony, by the way, for doing practical things. And it is important to do practical things. And so shout out to him for doing that. Anthony, if you listen to the playback, I would like to get your number, but if there's any way that I could assist you in helping or advancing the progress of the brothers and sisters in Shreveport, just give me a call, brother, or I'll try to connect with you. As far as the conversation that we have from time to time, I second Koku's opinion. There should be diversity of opinion, but I would just remind the brothers and sisters, I would remind them that there is a whole lot of, when Black men get together, there's this push and pull. You know what I mean? There's always this argument, and I would challenge them to argue, to try to hold off your impulses to argue with your brothers and sisters, and try to be able to have a respectful dialogue with one another. Let's show the world something a little bit different than we experience in our daily lives and even on YouTube. Fight the impulse to disagree with your brothers and try to go the other way. Because when you go in the direction of the point of least resistance, you are playing into your slave master's hands. One of the worst things in the world the slave master would ever want to see is Black men having a respectful dialogue with one another. That's not a point of his existence. His existence is to always have us at each other's throat. So to fight that slave master in your brain is to, even if you hear something you may not like, fight that impulse and do the exact opposite. The Christians have a thing where they have this thing, oh, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? So I would challenge the brothers to say, well, what would my slave master do? And do the exact opposite. Do the exact opposite. Do the exact opposite. Do something that is completely different from what he is expecting. So I would challenge the brothers to do that. Lastly, and most importantly, to my sisters who are listening, understand that we have confrontational conversations from time to time. Sometimes it may get out of hand, but we love y'all. We respect y'all. Y'all always open to this panel. Always open to this panel. And if anyone was to make you feel as if you are not invited or embraced on the Bitter Medicine podcast, we will fight them to the tooth and nail. Y'all always have a space on the Bitter Medicine podcast. I will just remind my sisters of that fact, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you for that, Buana. My shout outs to all the panelists who are here tonight: Kofi the Black Critic, Black Steel, Buana, Jacadero, Brother Bakari, and all of you who are in the chat tonight. Jacadero, I give a verbal nudge there. You guys, let's get active. Be it online on the Discord or in the real world. In any event, that's the show tonight. We should be back next week. I hope you guys the best during the week. Be Black, be African, do your best to uplift the community, uplift your families. And until next time, you guys be good. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.